Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, September 19, 2017 Board of County Commissioners meeting, which will now be called to order. We will begin with a moment of silent reflection for our first responders, which will be followed by an invocation by Jeffrey Smith, our clerk of the Circuit Court, and it will be also followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Tim Zorc. Please rise. Once again, please join us in a moment of silent reflection in full support of all of our first responders who work tirelessly for our public safety.
Lord, you say in your word in Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." In Psalms 46:10, you say, "Be still and know that I am God." Lord, in the last week and a half, we've had severe weather and storms and what have you go through. And I'll be first to admit that I probably wasn't still and knew that you were God during that time. But Lord, give us the ability to know that you're in control and to celebrate that fact. Lord, today we also celebrate two heroes. And Lord, we just ask your blessing on them and their families. We have several that are retiring today, Lord. We ask blessings on them for their future. And again, we ask prayer for all our first responders and our military men and women all around the world. Lord, we pray for those that are experiencing the wrath of Hurricane Maria right now. And Lord, we just ask you to guide us to know that you are in control. These things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all, and we appreciate everybody attending. At this time, do we have any additions, deletions to the agenda, emergency items, other than item 5D Delta? No, that will not be a time certain at this point, but we will have a deletion, which is 10B2, the request to speak from Mr. Torkerman regarding a utility bill, and I believe that that will be rescheduled at his convenience. Is there anything further that needs to be added or deleted from the agenda or emergency items?
How would you like that added, Mr. Chairman?
And I think what we'll do is we'll also, for the attending public and the audience, last night we were alerted that one individual in the community has come missing. And I believe that we would just like to make a public announcement regarding his disappearance and ask for your help. Without further ado, but let's first accept the agenda as it is and include a brief statement for the Kim family.
Great, thank you.
If that'll be appropriate.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
And that's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Commissioner Zorc, I would like you to talk about our friend.
Yes, on the screen is a picture of John Michael Kim. He's a former intern here at Indian River County, as well as Congressman Posey. Many of you know the Youngs family, the produce stands that they own along the Treasure Coast. John went missing Sunday evening at the entrance of Portofino Shores in northern St. Lucie County. He has not been seen since or heard of since that time. If anybody has any information or any sightings of John, Please call the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office at 772-465-5770. Again, 772-465-5770. Any information would be greatly appreciated by the family and by local law enforcement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Zork. We appreciate that, and perhaps at the end we'll also put that picture up once again. I appreciate it. Next, we'll be going to proclamations and presentations. We have, first item is a presentation of proclamation for retirement award honoring DeWard Howard Jr. on his retirement from Indian River County Board of County Commissioners, Department of Public Works, Engineering Division, and with his 23 years of service. So, Dee, come on down. D comes with a rather small contingent, that whole row, and we'll let it, later on we'll see them. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to say that this is an esteemed honor for me to have the opportunity to present this proclamation, a well-deserved proclamation, and D. Well, let me go forward with this because we'll expect a few words from you too. Then we'll wrap it. This proclamation reads as follows, honoring DeWard Howard Jr. on his retirement from Indian River County Board of County Commissioners, Department of Public Works, and Engineering Division. Whereas DeWard Howard Jr. retired from Indian River County Engineering Division effective September 29th, 2017. Whereas DeWard Howard Jr. began his career with the Indian River County on August 26, 1994 as the manager for county projects inspections. On March 3, 2000, he was promoted to construction coordinator manager. He continued in this capacity until his retirement. And whereas DeWard Howard Jr. has served his county and the public with distinction and selflessness, and during his 23 years of service, he was dedicated to his work and was greatly appreciated by his employer, his citizens, and co-workers alike. And now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the Board applauds DeWard Howard Jr.'s efforts on behalf of the county, and the Board wishes to express their appreciation for the dedication service that he has provided and given to Indian River County for the last 23 years. And be it further proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners and staff extend a heartfelt wishes for his success in his future endeavors. Duly adopted this 19th day of September 2017. And I have taken the opportunity to sign that. But more importantly is, you know, when you come in and out of the building, you had an access badge, and that access badge has to be surrendered. This one's a little bigger. This is your new access badge. I don't know where you're going to hold it or put it, but I don't think there's a person in this building that doesn't know your face and your name, although they call you D.
Yes, sir.
And, well, let me read this to you. This is certified that DeWard Howard Jr. is hereby presented this retirement award for outstanding performance and faithful service to Indian River County Board of County Commissioners for 23 years of service on this 29th day of September 2017. And it is signed by the Director of Public Works, Richard Spirica, and myself. And we appreciate your service and your commitment. And yes, when we said that a lot of people knew who you were, we also included just about everything that got built in this county, because as a consistent word, we heard, I believe my fellow commissioners have heard, D. Howard's working on it. And it was a consistent line that we heard that we're going to miss. But we know that you've left a legacy here. D.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure working for Indian River County. We're blessed to have fine citizens here, and many of those people work right here for Indian River County. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate, I know, I appreciate everything you've done for this county and working for the citizens, because a man that has worked so many years, not to hear an unkind word, and always in a positive fashion, that's an accomplishment. It's not the pension that's the accomplishment, it's how you got there. And you did it well, sir, and I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Gotta run the gauntlet now. Take a look at behind you. Huh? Dee, how would you like a picture with all your colleagues here? We're gonna get them all up. They got a participating part. Come on up, guys and ladies. Come on up. And we did you first because they want to get back to work. We learned a lesson about them glasses, didn't we? Dee, you might want to hold this one up. That's your proclamation. Here's your new access badge. Okay. As your department head, I'm sure you want to get it. Rich, come on in, please. I know he didn't have to be supervised, but at least be in the picture.
I think it's nice the way he dressed up for Dee's award today.
Yes. Well, Dee's taking him out to lunch.
You want us to double up the rows a little bit?
Want to tighten him up?
All right, everybody ready? On three. 1, 2, 3. Do one more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, Dee. Thank you. Thank you. In a few words, but a lot of action.
Mr. Chair, if I could I just want to say quickly, Dee's an institution around here, great guy, hard worker, true gentleman. Just want to thank him for his service to the county for all these years. And I will say that, we're under a local declaration of emergency still, so I'm thinking about not accepting his retirement and commandeering him to keep working for the county. So, but you will be missed, Dee, so thank you.
So we can rescind that.
Yeah.
Don't give up your access badge yet. We'll just wait a little. They actually do want to get back to work. The next item is a presentation and proclamation honoring Deborah Clemenzi on her retirement from the Property Appraiser's Office.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Bob Solari will be presenting.
Good morning, Ms. Clemenzi. Thank you for coming today, and I'm very happy to read this proclamation honoring you on your retirement from the Property Appraiser's Office. Whereas Deborah Clemenzi will retire from the Property Appraiser's Office of Indian River County effective September 29th, 2017. And whereas Deborah Clemenzi has been employed with the Property Appraiser's Office of Indian River County starting May 1978 to March 1979, and then again starting October 13th, 1993, where she has continued in the capacity of accountant until her retirement. And whereas Deborah Clemenzi has served this county and the public with distinction and selflessness. During her years of service, she is dedicated to her work and was greatly appreciated by property appraiser David C. Nolte and her co-workers alike. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the Board applauds Deborah Clemenzi's efforts on behalf of the Property Appraiser's Office and wishes to express their appreciation for the dedicated service she has given to Indian River County for the last 25 years, and the board and staff extend heartfelt wishes for success in her future endeavors. Adopted this 19th day of September 2017 and signed by all 5 members of the Board of County Commissioners. And before you say a few words, Ms. Clemenza, I just want to thank you for your work in the county. I think the last 8 or 10 days particularly has shown that every employee in this county is very important, and it basically makes this county run so well for the citizens of Indian River County. And for your part in that, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you.
Everything you'd like to say?
This is kind of overwhelming. I didn't think it would be. As much as you think you're ready for it, sometimes it kind of hits you in the face, and it's like, okay, this is it. I've enjoyed working for the county all these years. I especially have enjoyed working for the property appraiser and all my coworkers. They make it easy for me to do my job and to do it proficiently. I've enjoyed working with the other agencies and the other departments, and I thank all of them for their cooperation, and I just appreciate them all so very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nolte?
Well, Mickey Upfrey, Chief Deputy Property Appraiser. I have the distinct honor to speak for Mr. Nolte today. He sincerely apologizes for not being able to attend. We would like to thank Debbie for her 25 years. It's been a close friendship, like a family, as you know. And we wish you the best endeavors for your future. I know you and Leroy and the grandkids and everybody got a lot of plans, so go fulfill those plans. Again, we just can't thank you enough for all your dedication. Sincerely appreciated by all. I think I speak for the staff and Mr. Nolte for that. So we really do appreciate it, Deb, and we're going to miss you.
Thank you.
We're going to miss you.
Thank you.
The rest of the group up here too?
Why not?
Come on, guys.
Mickey.
We got a big crowd.
Congratulations, man. Thank you. Everyone, what do you say, man? Good. Good morning.
I had you speaking soon. Whoa. Ladies and gentlemen, your property appraiser's office. Oh.
Y'all gonna have to double up, I think, with everybody. Yeah, yeah. Point and click. Point and click.
Somebody's got to take the lead. Okay.
Oh boy. Triple it up.
All right, on 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Take them, buddy. Here we go.
All right.
That was pretty tight. We're going to be in trouble if the sheriff brings his team in. Well, we just lost half the room, and the next item is about a presentation of proclamation designating the month of September as Attendance Awareness Month. We are aware. That will be presented by Vice Chairman Peter O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we have some folks here from the Learning Alliance. Marie, come on down. Good morning.
Good morning.
First, let me apologize. This was originally scheduled for last week's meeting, but as you know, we were a little bit busy last week, so unfortunately, we had to push this back a week, but we're still proud to present this, and I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, then we'll hear from you what you all are doing. This is a proclamation designating the month of September 2017 as Attendance Awareness Month. Whereas chronic absences, missing 10% or more of school for any reason, including excused and unexcused absences, or just 2 or 3 days a month, is a proven predictor of academic trouble and dropout rates. And whereas improving attendance and reducing chronic absences takes commitment, collaboration, and tailored approaches to particular challenges and strengths in each community. And whereas chronic absences predicts lower third grade reading proficiency, course failure, and eventual dropout, and it weakens our communities and our local economy. And whereas schools and community partners can reach out more frequently to absent students to determine why they are missing school and what would help them attend more regularly. And whereas chronic absences can be significantly reduced when schools, parents, and communities work together to monitor and promote good attendance and address hurdles that keep children from getting to school. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that the month of September 2017 be designated as Attendance Awareness Month in Indian River County, and the board encourages all citizens to commit to focusing on reducing chronic absenteeism to give all children an equitable opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive academically, emotionally, and socially. Adopted this 19th day of September 2017, endorsed by all 5 county commissioners. And having a wife who's a teacher, I hear almost daily the struggles some of the children have because of problems at home or issues, and it's not just the absenteeism, it's a lack of resources, it's wondering, you know, where's the next meal going to come from? A lot of these things these kids are facing, and certainly the chronic absenteeism is a big thing, because every day they're out of the classroom is a day they're not learning. So it does have a huge impact. But why don't you all tell us what you folks are up to handle this?
Good morning, and thank you. I'm Dr. Lillian Torres-Martinez. I'm the Executive Director for Student Services and Exceptional Student Education. We really appreciate you providing us with this opportunity to have this proclamation today. We've done it for the past 6 years, and we really appreciate that. Well, we started this endeavor with this, and on behalf of the school district, in collaboration with the Learning Alliance and the Moonshot Moment, really recognizing the importance of attendance. We've even been recognized nationally with our promotion of attendance and our decrease of chronic absenteeism. But we can't do it alone. It takes a whole community. It takes partners like the Learning Alliance, working towards the Moonshot Moment, the Gifford Youth Activity Center, and all community members to really promote attendance in our schools, to remove the barriers to access, to provide for all the social, emotional, and health and basic needs that our students need so that they could attend school on a regular basis. And as a community, this wonderful community of Indian River County, we are doing that work, and we appreciate your support. I really would like to reach out to all the public that's here. If they come across a student and the student is absent, just send a message and continue to promote this, because every day counts. If they're not in school, we cannot reach them. If they're in school, we could reach them academically, socially, and emotionally. Thank you.
Good.
Marie?
Of course, Freddie has to say
Freddie.
something.
Partner.
As a partner, Freddie Wolf for Gifford Youth Achievement Center, I wouldn't dare pass up this opportunity because we do have a very close relationship with the school district, with the Learning Alliance, and our facility has been one that embraces that concept of making sure that kids attend. If you don't go, you don't grow. So we have to make sure that they go to be enhanced academically. We do believe that it takes teamwork to make the dream work, and that's what we are doing here, teaming up with the Learning Alliance and with the County Commission and other areas of the county to make sure that these kids are prepared to learn by being there. I was so happy to be a part of a feeding program just this week when the school district brought around on the school bus meals for kids to eat. That was, to me, was fantastic. So it's not just the academic, it's not just the attendance, it's the, as you said, Commissioner O'Brien, it's the feeding, making sure those kids are prepared on the proper level to learn. So we're going to say thank you so very much this morning for all that you do for the kids here in Indian River County.
Very good.
You know, Commissioner O'Brien, you said that Freddie would not pass up the opportunity to have a few words, and we know that. But
Yeah, we could mention that about someone else, too.
you want me to guess?
No need to guess.
Thank you. With that, though, I just want to say that Freddie said a few words, but it's many years ago, and I was wearing a green uniform. But I have to tell you that the comment that Doc made about it takes the community, it takes the group, it takes the citizens. There's one Freddie riding around in his truck in the morning, and I, as a deputy, I'm saying there's a guy in a pickup truck just riding real slow. What he was doing is making sure that somebody got to school that might not have been going to school. And so he's not only a man of words, he's a man of action. And I don't think he realized I remembered that. It had to be at least 15 years ago. But there was Freddie making sure that that person went directly to the school, to Dodgetown Elementary. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for that, Freddie. Ready? Yeah, I got a little memory.
You guys want a picture, or? Oh, yep. Ian is ready to go.
They got to prove they attended. Thank you. Well, the next item is a presentation. We have a presentation of proclamation that will be given regarding the Carnegie Hero Fund Commission Award of the Carnegie Medal of Honor, Indian River County Sheriff's Deputies Robert Sunkel and Sergeant Linda Nolan. And I just wanted to let everyone know that Congressman Bill Posey wanted to be here. Unforeseen circumstances prohibited him to do that. So I'm going to call upon Lieutenant Tom Rowland to begin the introduction and the process. And of course, I see the proud sheriff in the back of the room.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for letting us share this venue to do this. As you know, we're presenting the Carnegie Hero Fund Commission Award to Sergeant Nolan and Deputy Sunkel today. One of the things that the fund does is it likes to have a prior recipient come and actually present the award. We are very fortunate to have Mr. Cash-Eye with us, who in 1976, under very similar circumstances to our own deputies, rescued someone from a burning car, actually two people from a burning car in Orlando. And as a result of that, he got to know members of one of the victims' families who coincidentally happened to be a sergeant with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Mr. Kashai ended up going to the police academy and becoming a reserve deputy with Orange County for a period of time, so another coincidence. It is certainly a great honor for us to have him here and for me to introduce the prior recipient of the Carnegie Hero Fund Commission Award, Mr. Kashai.
Good morning, Commissioners and ladies and gentlemen. As a previous awardee, it's my great honor and privilege to be here on behalf of the Carnegie Hero Fund Commission. Andrew Carnegie was a steel industrialist and a leading philanthropist in the United States at the turn of the century. The Hero Fund was created by Mr. Carnegie in 1904 after the Harwick coal mine explosion. The explosion took the lives of 179 coal miners, and after the explosion, 2 men went into the mine in an ill-fated rescue attempt, and they also lost their lives. Within 3 months of the disaster, Carnegie had set aside $5 million under the care of a commission to recognize what he called civilization's heroes, and to provide financial assistance for those disabled and the dependents of those killed helping others. During the 113-year existence of the fund, it has awarded 9,953 medals and over $39 million in accompanying grants, including scholarships and continued assistance. Since 1904, the Commission's definition of a hero has been unchanged. It is a civilian who knowingly risks his or her own life to an extraordinary degree while saving or attempting to save the life of another person. Carnegie's inspiration may have came from his Catholic upbringing, from a verse found in the Bible at John 15:13, which says, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." Deputy Linda Nolan and Robert Sunkel exemplified that love when they rescued Cheryl D. Coons from burning on March 23, 2016. It is now my pleasure to present you both with these awards and welcome you to the Carnegie family.
Congratulations. Thank you, congratulations.
Hold on, don't go anywhere. Center yourself.
Right here.
Just kidding.
Yeah, please, please. And there are a few supporting members here. Both deputies have families here.
Oh, you broke it now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's just great to see great deputies, law enforcement officers recognized. Thank you. Next item is a presentation proclamation designating September 18th through 22nd, 2017 as Industry Appreciation Week. And we have none other than Helene Hazeltine here with a select group. And that will be presented by Commissioner Susan Adams.
Wonderful, welcome. It's my pleasure to read the proclamation. Proclamation designating September 18th through 22nd, 2017 as Industry Appreciation Week in Indian River County, Florida. Whereas business and industry in Indian River County is increasingly vital to the health of our entire county, and whereas while our local economy continues to strengthen, the sustainability of Indian River County's existing industries is key to a prosperous future. And whereas the future expansion of those industries will account for the majority of new high-wage and high-skilled jobs created in our county. And whereas our existing industries help sustain our quality of life by diversifying and strengthening our tax base in Indian River County. And whereas the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce serves as the county's primary economic development organization, providing support for the retention and expansion of local industry. And whereas public awareness of the contributions made by industry is essential to the maintenance of good community industry relationships. And whereas Indian River County government recognizes the achievements of our local businesses and industries. And whereas all residents are encouraged to take time to salute Indian River County industries and their employees for the contributions they make in our community. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that the week of September 18th through the 22nd, 2017, be designated as Industry Appreciation Week in Indian River County, adopted this 19th day of September, and signed by all 5 county commissioners. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. Would you like to say a few words about what you have going on this week?
I would. Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Helene Castletine, Economic Development Director with the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. And thank you so much for reading that proclamation. And we appreciate you joining us in recognizing the importance of business and industry here in Indian River County. And it's so important for the success and sustainability of our local economy. As you know, our Industry Appreciation Awards Luncheon is this Thursday, and we'll be recognizing, we'll have 18 awards recognizing local businesses for all they do in our community, either through aesthetic improvements or through their community involvement and building up our economy. And that will be done in front of a sold-out crowd. So thank you very much for your support as always. And if you'll indulge me, I do have a few members of our committee, our awards committee, here with me this morning, and I'd like to introduce them, if I may. We have Anna Valencia Tillery, who's the chair of our committee. She's with White Glove Moving, Storage, and Delivery. We have Lynn Fisk, who is with EGP Document Solutions, a past chair of our committee. We have Donna Kingsley with Vero Chemical and Alphonse Alexander with Alexander Insurance Company. I don't think anyone else. Okay. So this is just a small representation of our committee, and these are the folks who go out there and seek out the nominations and do the voting, the ultimate voting on who will be presented awards. So again, thank you so much for your support and all that we do in economic development. Thank you.
No, thank you for all what you all do to ensure that this is a great place to work and live and prosper. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Morning, how are you?
Okay.
Good. How you doing? Good to see you again. Hey, how's it going?
What's going on? Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. There's no way Anna was going to let her go.
Well, if I insist. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you once again. Well, the next item is a presentation by New Horizons of the Treasure Coast and Okeechobee on mental health matters and a spoken word poem about mental health by none other than Indian River County's poet laureate and pillar of our community, Sean Sexton.
I'd just like to say a few words. Lisa Reimer with New Horizons. September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. It is the second leading cause of death in America for 10 to 34-year-olds. And so today we thought that we would do something to express the matters of the heart through art. So I'm just going to take a little video.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sean.
Good morning.
When you find yourself in need of a place like New Horizons, you become very grateful that they're there, and sometimes you might find yourself in the position of having to Baker Act somebody and wonder where the hell to go, and it's wonderful when in that situation to have a place that's not just all about money, you know, that's full of people who are there for the right reasons. And I have been in that position, and so I know firsthand how valuable a place like New Horizons is. And I'm going to read two poems. They're actually not spoken word poems. They're poems written by Red Eisenman Troll, who was published by my publisher, Anhinga Press. And I think that she speaks from full knowledge of her subject, probably in the first hand. So this is, excuse me one moment. It's called Last Word. At 16, I come to the ledge again. There's nothing between the sky and me, but so much between my body and the ground. Windows I would pass on the way down. Businessmen distracted from their phone calls by a blur they wouldn't know was me, until the sirens came to still the typing fingers, stop the herd of morning traffic, remind the city of its children who might not be in school. This is for Matt Parker, who called me fat in 7th grade, for the doctor who said I'd always fall below the growth curve, for the saccharinely pretty girl who stole my seat in calculus, for Mom and Dad who made us give up the dog rather than build a fence. This is for the cop who caught me speeding, the postman who comes empty-handed, for the rumor starters and the Taco Bell woman who never smiles or gives the right change. But mostly here with my arms outstretched, pretending to dare the wind to take me, I'm an alarm wailing in the night, set off by a banging shutter, waking the house for nothing. My bandages and blades are not well hidden, journals earmarked at warning passages and left open. I cry, leaning against the thin walls, and still my family sleeps. I tore down my posters, burned my dolls, no one asks why. Maybe it takes an actual jump, the sound of my life briefly on the wind. Maybe to see me, they have to kneel by my body like a test somebody finally scored incorrect. They have to close the zeros of my eyes. Tomorrow I will come back and do this again, but not today. I don't really want to be a concrete signature. I want to grow old, choosing ink over blood, with which on the flank of the world I'll set my brand. And this is a last poem. Let's see, here we go. Called Counting Miracles. And this is written from inside a rehab place. And it's sort of the other subject. Some nights, called Counting Miracles. Some nights, Estelle lets us join her outside while she takes a smoking break and calls her girlfriend on the cell phone. Josh and May and I sit nearby in the grass, leaning against each other, counting miracles. Not white doves drifting by at just the right moment, or some former comatose staggering back from the brink making talk show claims about light. We don't believe anymore that rare luck some call blessing. We don't believe anymore in that rare luck some call blessing, but we've learned a thing or two about miracles for the common man, the stuck man. A nest of robins about to hatch, fast cars on the highway going somewhere. In the sky, webs of lightning and that squirm of rhythm whenever the stars flare up, holding on to centuries of wishes, polishing them over and over. The stars know the danger of even a bingo-paced Wednesday and light themselves every night in celebration of the simple fact of our survival. Thank you. You've been a wonderful audience.
You're a wonderful presenter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
I
nice.
have
That's
done.
very meaningful.
I've had some good duties as poet laureate, and I spoke on behalf of the Memorial Island Iraqi and Afghanistan Veterans Memorial, and read poems there by an Iraqi war vet. So I am holding up my end.
Very good. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Sure.
Sean, can I get a picture? Thank you.
No, thank you.
Come up here in the middle, Sean.
No, I'm better.
We could have Scott take the picture if you wish. Please.
Okay, I just gotta get, so everyone did it. 1, 2. Losing Joe. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you.
reading.
Good seeing you. Thank you, Scott. Thank you again, Sean. The next item is a presentation by Jeffrey R. Smith, Indian River County Clerk of the Circuit Court and Controller of the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting Award for the year 2016, Comprehensive Annual Finance Report, or the CAFR, and the Outstanding Achievement Award for the Popular Annual Financial Report, PAFR, for the year 2016, and to the Finance Department of Indian River County Clerk of the Court and the Controller's Office from the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada, the GFOA. Good morning, Jeffrey Smith.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Smith, Clerk of the Court and Comptroller. I'd like to present to the board your award for the September 30th, 2016 financial reporting year. This is the 34th year that you've earned the excellence in financial reporting from the GFOA, and also the second year that we received the PAFR, Popular Annual Financial Report Award, from the GFOA as well. So I'd like to thank my staff, first of all, my new finance director, Alyssa Nagy, and the soon-to-be retired one, Diane Bernardo, and Rayanne Cohn, my senior accountant, and Ed Halsey, my internal auditor / senior accountant as well, for their help. I'd also like to thank the board's budget office and the county administrator for the relationship that we have and the working relationship that we have. So thank you, and I'd like to present it to you, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Jeff, real quick, just, are other counties doing the popular financial report?
Yeah, a lot of them are, not every one of them are, but
okay.
we started it 2 years ago because I wanted to get that going. We'd never had it before, but yeah, several counties do it, not everyone, but it's a good way for you all to get the word out to the, in a layman's terms. What?
Yeah, I think it's an outstanding publication, and encourage you to keep putting that out. I think that's a very useful tool.
Yes, great.
Okay, good, thank you.
Glad to hear that.
Thank you, Jeff. And your entire staff. Wow. There's some heavy stuff here.
Well, we started giving me one plaque with each medallion per year, because I got them all on there. That's the way to do it.
Now, we get these two, and also all those awards in the Office of Management and Budget, so.
Same organization.
That's, wow.
You want me to hold one of
There
those?
you go. There you go. Yes, please, Mr. Vice Chairman. They are heavy.
All right, everyone ready? On three. 1, 2, 3. Do one more. 1, 2, 3.
And we need one more. We need the entire staff to come up. Thank you. How was that for putting them on the spot, Jeff?
I like the crown.
Yes. They do a lot of work to make this happen.
Like the little cheap things
Look,
we
they
do.
got those spots for the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, once again, on 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you again.
Thank you again. Thank you. You hold those up somewhere, Jeff? Yeah. All right. Sounds good. All right.
We'll come visit them.
Yeah, here you go.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you, team. With that, the next item will be approval of minutes for the regular meeting of July 11th, 2017, the budget workshop, July the 12th, 2017, and the regular meetings of July 18th,
So moved.
2017. That's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by myself. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. We now move on to informational items. Commissioners? I'd just like to say that we did, with great reluctance, receive the resignation of Dwayne Wise as a citizen member of the appointee to the Value Adjustment Board. We appreciate his commitment, his years of service to us, and I think that the taxpayer and those who come before the Value Adjustment Board greatly benefit by his participation, and he served us for about 10 years, so we want to thank him. Is there anything else on the informational items? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item 8AB.
Item 8AB. Okay. Anything else from the board? Is there anybody from the audience that wishes to have any item from the consent agenda pulled for further discussion? Haven't given ample opportunity. Seeing none, come forward. Commissioners?
Move approval of the consent agenda as amended.
Second. That's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by myself. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Commissioner Zork, item AB.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in full support of this resolution. Would just like to add, when our public works staff works in coordination with DOT on this, there's been a number of meetings with the property owners at the 5, 10, and US 1 area that are willing to cooperate to resolve some of the issues, the Graves Brother Holdings, Jeff Bass, and they have a large presence in that northern part of that of the intersection there, and they just like to be kept in the loop on the communication side to work through problems in advance, so we don't end up with a work product in the design issue that had some flaws in it on a prior project. So that's all I have. Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
And it's a motion by Commissioner Zork, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. That concludes the consent agenda. And we'll now move on to constitutional offices. And the Indian River County Sheriff Darrell Law is here, and he is making a request for $19,300 from the Criminal and Sex Offender Registration Fee account for purchase of software and office supplies. Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, Board. As you recall, 2009 ordinance was drafted and approved by primarily this board that allowed us to procure dollars from sexual offenders and sexual predators upon their entering our county and registering in our county. And this is an annual request that we make to exhaust those funds by 9/30.
Move approval of sheriff's request.
Second.
That's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Zork. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Sheriff now has an item he wishes to discuss, the county budget amendment that he would like to present.
Sure. Well, thank you, and good morning again, Commissioners. Obviously, we've all had a very busy 2 weeks at least in preparation, preparing, effectuating, and the cleanup, so be it, of the storm. As you know, as a historical background, on 9/7 Thursday, September the 7th at 0600, the Indian River County Sheriff's Office implemented something that is known as Alpha Bravo shift. In other words, everyone with a gun and a badge is working 12-hour shifts, 6A to 6P, 6P to 6A, as well as essential civilians, as well as our correctional staff that I know that you're also familiar with. As we progressed through that week, our jail was obviously had some other issues, but I've spoken to Mr. Brown about that, and we're going to resolve those. We were able to remove them from Alpha Bravo shift on Monday morning, the 11th, as the law enforcement side continued to function as we progressed through the storm. Not until 9/14 Thursday at 0600 did I elect to withdraw from the Alpha Bravo shift, hopefully getting back to some type of normalcy. So in other words, we worked from 0600 on 9/7 to 0600 on 9/14. Obviously, school being out that Thursday and Friday, the 7th and the 8th, and all of the excitement in the community that particular Wednesday night, Thursday morning is why I elected to go to Alpha Bravo ahead of time. There's been some discussion about that, but I can tell you the community realized the presence of law enforcement, and we're very proud not to have any significant incidents. In the meantime, that 9/7, 9/8, 9/9, 9/10 was the end of a payroll period. And I bring that up because that was, to date, about $520,000, those 4 particular days. So that leaves us with the balance of the 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th, which is why I'm here today. I've spoken to Mr. Brown about this. In fact, the detail continues to some degree with our situation going on at Blue Cypress. So we still have some overtime being accrued there. So I'm simply asking for a budget amendment. Public safety is not cheap. And being this time of the fiscal, of course, our pay period was Friday the 15th, was our 25th pay period, with our final pay period of the fiscal being the 29th. So we're here today to ask for dollars to simply make payroll for next week.
Mr.
Well, first of all, I'd like to know how many dollars you're asking for. I mean, it seems...
Okay. Sure. So today we're at 14,200 hours, 14,200 hours of overtime, and that is since September the 7th at 0600. to include, expenses are not included in that. But the situation is, since we are so close to the end of the fiscal, I had planned on having about $230,000 left over, but that did not happen. Obviously, we absorbed that in our pay period on 9/15. So going forward to say, by the way, obviously there's some reimbursement coming from the federal government and the like, but as important, the work the men and women done, I know that we're not debating that, but the fact is public safety is not cheap. We've got all of the FEMA forms completed already. They will be submitted. In fact, we're being audited by FEMA, the county as a whole, from Matthew, which of course was in this fiscal as well, which was October of last year, which we are due about $297,000 from that. So to answer your question, Commissioner Solari, and mind you, the dollars will be given back that are not used for payroll purposes of about $950,000.
But that's for the full payroll for that time, so about half of it would be the overtime.
Correct.
Okay, so
All right, so we're
I'm trying to figure
whole
out
on
how
our
much
regular
you're asking
payroll.
for, and you wouldn't be asking for the full amount of payroll.
Correct. We're asking for overtime dollars.
Yeah, and my question is, how much is that?
About $950,000.
Oh, I thought that was you said for the dates, the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, the full payroll was 520.
No. That was overtime. I stand corrected. That was overtime. That was coded emergency overtime. When you've got close to 500 employees working around the clock making the county safe, that's the cost of doing business.
Okay.
And those are hard numbers.
It would have been, you said you'd already gotten all your FEMA papers filled out and everything.
Correct.
It would have been nice to have some backup here, because again, it seems difficult to figure out how you'd have, again, if I understood you right, you were saying you went to 12-hour shifts.
Correct.
Which would mean 8 hours would be regular pay, and then 4 hours of overtime. So equivalently, an extra day.
That varies depending on the shift. Remember, 24-day operations, you also have guys and gals that were off. That was a regular scheduled day.
That's why it would help to have some backup, because with some back of the envelope type numbers I come up with about 426,000 for a 6-day period.
No.
So I understand, but given that you haven't given us anything to work with,
okay,
it's difficult to authorize something of this magnitude with absolutely no background. I mean, I'm not questioning the job the officers did, which was absolutely exceptional in both the sheriff's office, all municipal police officers, and our emergency services.
Thank you.
But we still have an obligation to the taxpayers to get some sense of what we're spending, and it would be nice to have some information about that.
Yes, sir.
What was the total for Matthew last year?
Well, I've had that debate with Mr. Brown as well.
Again,
Matthew's a 4-day event. Matthew was a 4-day Alpha Bravo event with a lot less situations involving our residents. So to compare that was just $297, not counting the expenses. That was the FEMA reimbursement that we have not received yet.
Okay, but now this is 3 times more than that. So again, it's difficult to see how it would be 3 times more.
Okay.
So,
sir, I can tell you that we have the payroll and we have the hours recorded that were documented on all of the FEMA 214 forms. I'm here today to tell you what we need to make payroll next Friday. It's that simple. If there's any excess dollars, obviously I'm gonna return those to the county. This is dollars that obviously we're going to be reimbursed for by the federal government as well. So I can tell you that the paperwork is completed. I'd be happy to forward that to you, but I will tell you that including FICA, including FRS, our overtime expenses for the first 4 days of the storm was $520,000. Now, we're in the middle of a pay period, so I do not have the exact dollar amount because other things occur. For example, the detail that's going on at Blue Cypress Lake right now, which is a situation, and that's being staffed right now with overtime law enforcement.
Mr. Chairman, if I could jump in, just want to say thanks to the sheriff and all of the deputies out there. Did a great job during the storm. Like Commissioner Solari, my concern is the documentation and the magnitude. We had about $270,000 for the sheriff's overtime last year for Hurricane Matthew. The other county operations had about 270,000, so it was kind of a match between fire rescue and public works and utilities and emergency management, all of our activities. I do understand that there was more police presence out there prior to Irma due to the size of the storm. I think that made sense to have an additional presence. In my mind, in my memory, I think the utility companies were faster responsively this year than after Matthew. I recall more traffic direction needing to be done by the law enforcement agencies after last year's storm. So while the front end was longer, it seemed to me that the back end was a little shorter in this one. Our concern is that we do have to document all of this. We haven't gotten the documentation yet. Hopefully we can get that soon from the sheriff, and just we need to be vigilant and make sure we're getting all the documentation to justify the expense. FEMA will require that of us. I do also want to point out FEMA's rules are typically you can get reimbursement for emergency protective measures up to 72 hours prior to landfall. As we recall, it was about Sunday evening when we got landfall, so that would put a limit on us at about Thursday evening. So some of these expenses may not be reimbursable from FEMA. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. Understood the great job that was done by all out there, and the sheriff's office was great to work with through the storm. Just concerned about the dollar amount, and I can tell you we don't have final numbers on our end either, but whereas last year, Hurricane Matthew, the county's overtime was pretty close altogether to what the sheriff's office was. I don't anticipate our overtime being anywhere near $950,000 this time. So that's just also another metric that we're using to compare. So I think we need to do our due diligence and make sure we've got good written documentation for any overtime and emergency protective measures that we spend.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, given the timing and everything like that, I understand there's a timing issue here and he's got a payroll to make. But if I understood him right, he also said that he had in excess of about $230,000. So if he needs $520,000 to make this payroll, and I don't doubt that he had, over the period, $290,000 of overtime, you take the $230,000 that he has left, add the $290,000, and that should give him the $520,000 he makes for payroll. So I will make the motion to go with the $290,000 at this time and give the sheriff more time to come up with the documentation for the rest.
Respectfully, sir, that's not going to be enough. You know, it's really kind of frustrating. We think about the calls for service that we had Wednesday and Thursday and the fights at the gas stations and the supermarkets, to be talking about a value of public safety when the dollars for the majority are going to be reimbursed, that the county was safe, our residents were safe, and we're sitting here debating over whether the sheriff's office payroll is correct. That's really frustrating. I'll tell you that.
I don't think we're questioning the law enforcement job. I think we still have to be financially responsible. I can tell you, we got fire rescue out there. They were working double shifts part of the time. Our overtime numbers not going to be anywhere near that for fire rescue. So please don't misunderstand our need for documentation for the number with us not with us questioning the job that was done.
There's no doubt about it. Although we do have twice as many law enforcement officers than firefighters, but I will say that, gentlemen and madam, we're going to turn in our paperwork legit. There's nothing here saying we're not. I'm talking about making payroll next Friday, and the amount that Commissioner Solari is recommending is not going to do it.
According to your numbers, it's just what you need to make payroll.
Okay.
I think I know we don't have a second on this, but under discussion.
What I'm going to do, Sheriff, I have something to say too, but let's deal with this motion first, and then we'll continue.
Yes, sir.
I have a motion by Commissioner Solari to allocate what is the number?
The number would be $290,000.
$290,000 to the sheriff to make payroll for the expenses that were incurred during the Alpha Bravo designation at the sheriff's office for the sheriff's personnel.
Can I get one point of clarification before we move forward? That payroll on the 29th, what day is that through? I'm assuming you probably have another partial payroll that's still within
Certainly.
September 30th?
Certainly, that's through the 20th. We go from the 11th and through the 24th at 11:59 p.m.
So if additional funds are, you know, I'm thinking you may need to get some money for this week's, for next week's payroll, but then your final payroll, we could always revisit this on the October 3rd meeting if necessary, if there's addition, and that would be more time to do
And
the
and that's what I
paperwork.
expected. This was for the 4 days that the sheriff mentioned, the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. Those are the days, based on the sheriff's conversation, which I understood were the days that the payroll had to be met for.
You know, the fact is, I'm going to return the dollars at the end of the month. Whether you give me $950,000 or you give me 200 and something thousand, we're gonna have to come back next board meeting or whatever. You know, it's just frustrating knowing that those hard men and women that work those shifts away from their families are watching this. Is very embarrassing.
Well, Sheriff, again, it's been unprecedented that we continued the conversation and debate and the analogies. Well, we don't have a second just yet. So I'll open the floor for the second.
I'll second it now for discussion, but I'd like clarification also on what pay period are we talking about here and when is it due?
Okay, so payday was Friday the 15th. That paid through the Sunday night the 10th at 11:59 p.m. A new pay period started on 9/11, which was in the middle of the storm. That pay period will go through 9/11, and that pay period will end on 9/24 at 11:59 p.m. A new pay period will start on 12 a.m. on Monday, 9/25.
Okay, so for the pay period that was paid on the 15th
Correct.
through the 10th, you already have covered then the overtime cost for that payroll?
Correct. However, we covered it with dollars that we had at the end of this fiscal year that were encumbered. In other words, the timing of the storm was not the best. So those dollars have been exhausted because, as typical, oftentimes in the middle of September, agencies will pay for things like helicopter repairs, things that they have put off through a budget year, thinking we would like to get that repaired or we'd like to have this done, but we've got to wait. We've got a 365-day checkbook, essentially. And for the storm to come at that point of the time, of the month, of the year, of the fiscal year, that's a challenge as well. And I'm certain that the county's faced with that as well.
Okay. So what, just looking at the pay period from the 11th through the 24th, that's due on the 29th.
Correct.
How much overtime do you need for that?
You know, that's going to be speculating about the same over the 520 because there's an extra day in there. And that's not including any other hurricane emergency expenses, not regular overtime, hurricane emergency expenses, which are coded that way. And again, we didn't plan on the 520, the first part of the storm, as emergency overtime. We absorbed that and did not procure some of the things that we needed at the end of September. That is a typical practice. It's much like a household budget. You put off things until you realize that you can make that happen. Again.
So, but just so for the overtime from 9/7 through 9/14, you're saying that's going to be close to over $1 million of overtime?
Yes, sir. And if there's not, Commissioner O'Brien, you're certainly going to have a balance statement. I will give you every dollar back that's not hurricane overtime. If it's other type of overtime, that's a different story. This is the cost of public safety.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody is debating the service that we receive from the public safety, but I would think that those same deputies and personnel watching at home as taxpayers, would want to make sure that we don't just spend $1 million without documentation and support.
Oh, agreed.
And
Agreed.
I think they would be very upset
Right.
as us representing as elected officials if we don't do our fiduciary due diligence.
Absolutely. That's why you will
And
get.
again, nothing to do with the job performance.
Right.
I think, echoing what Commissioner Solari said, we do have a responsibility, and it's a significant sum, to make sure, and no one's doubting your word either, Sheriff.
Right.
But I don't think I would vote for $1 million for any constitutional officer that came up and just said, hey, I need $1 million by Friday, without some documentation.
Right. You'll be provided a cost of the expenses, whatever dollars that are allocated, and you will get the balance back. It's as simple as that, gentlemen and ladies.
Jason, and Sheriff, you said you have all this information available now. You have your FEMA forms filled out, you have your payroll reports?
All right here, sir.
Okay.
It was completed last night, or you would have had it electronically.
You know,
Okay, so where I would be, and I understand the urgency to make your payroll, Jason, would you be comfortable looking over the data the sheriff has? And then, you know, I'm good with Jason making the determination of what he thinks we should allocate to the sheriff based upon your review of his documentation?
Sorry, if there's a cap to that, and we have, and we get that it's based on the documentation, what is documented by the sheriff's office, and just as another point of information, you know, in 2004, Hurricanes Francis and Jean, 2 storms in the month of September, 3 weeks apart. The budget amendment for the sheriff's office for those 2 storms was $1 million. So that's why we have the questions. This is not questioning the job that was out there. I think we had 2 storms that each of those, the impact was more than we got from Irma. We had curfews, we had alcohol bans, we had people who never got power between Francis and Jean. So I think it begs the question: how did we have a similar level of expense for a 7-day time period that we had for 3.5 weeks of 2 storms that were each more significant than Irma's impacts?
So just, let me just finish this, Mr. Chairman.
please.
So Jason, then, to try to get a resolution here, so what if we say a cap of $500,000 for the payroll due on the 29th? Sheriff, we will then go back and look at the $520 you've already spent, and I'd be more than willing to make a budget amendment at that time to cover those funds. But in my mind, that payroll's been covered for now. So if we do another $500,000 for your payroll of the 29th and let Jason execute that here in the next day or two so that you can meet payroll, and then give Jason more time to sit down with you and go back to the original 520 and get your budget back in shape so that you can make those end of the year purchases. Can we work with that?
I have a question on that proposal, Commissioner O'Brien.
First, the original motion, it has nothing to do with the second that's being proposed, so I just want to go back before we continue, that we need to either go forward or we need to retreat from that motion.
I'll be happy to withdraw the initial motion in support of what Commissioner O'Brien just said.
So you now will be seconding Commissioner O'Brien's motion?
If that's the form of a motion, yes.
And I'll make it a motion for discussion.
And now it's gotten a second from Commissioner Solari. Please go ahead.
Yes, and from a budgeting standpoint, if we go with this approach with the dollars that are mentioned, you're basically borrowing Peter to pay Paul to get through the end of the year. So your year-end expenses that you had budgeted to take place will fall off, and then will fall in as budget amendments for after 10/1. So I'm just trying to look at it from an accounting cycle, because we don't meet next Tuesday, it pushes everything into October. And a couple other things, just want to make mention that I know I asked the sheriff to do, not me personally, but discussions at MPO taking control of 60 and 441, so that just staffing that for the 8 or 9 day period, making sure our residents could get through, get out to the turnpike, get to the west coast, or in some cases, they were reversing, coming back the other way. I think from the Gene and Francis, we had lessons learned, and we learned to get ahead of the curve.
Certainly.
Also, the Sunday before the storm was going at 14 miles an hour, was supposed to arrive earlier than it did, then it slowed to 7 miles an hour, then it shifted location. It was always a moving target. I think the concept might work if the dollars are a bit greater, then have a smaller true-up amount so that you can complete your year-end things that you had budgeted for the end of the year, because if not, you're going to use those funds to bridge the gap for the last portion, and then you're going to have those expenses then are going to fall into the next budget cycle.
Correct.
What was your amount, Commissioner O'Brien?
500,000.
So if we were to bump that up to maybe 700, that would get us closer. It doesn't fix the problem, but I'm trying to also figure out, we got to get to 3 up here. I think if we go the full amount, but it still creates a problem, but it's a smaller true-up problem, and then we'll have to deal with some of that go-forward stuff as a budget amendment tomorrow night for the 10-1 going forward, because that's where those expenditures are going to get pushed back to.
Right. If that was the way, but just know that I'll be back with the legit numbers, not that they're not legit, but something that you can read, what we are going to have to pay for the storm, and all of that is black and white. It's that simple. We still are operating on a deficit of the 297 from Matthew, which again, we've tried to get that resolved. Not to mention all the other things that have come up that I've heard from other commissioners as well. In fact, we're still waiting on Road and Bridge to deliver some barriers out to Blue Cypress so we can clear that detail.
It should be out there this morning.
Done today.
Good. So this is not a, to compare the 04 and 05 storms, we could debate that all day, population, preparedness, et cetera. We're wasting our time actually talking about that.
And the duration just got expanded because of the shifting changes,
Right.
which, and I know we all lived through Francis and Gene, which were not enjoyable, but I think we've approached things differently to get ahead of the problems.
Certainly.
I don't know if the maker of the motion would consider a higher amount with a smaller true-up afterwards, and will we have to address items pushed out of this fiscal year into next year at our budget meeting tomorrow night? Just trying to think ahead of the accounting cycle.
If the county administrator is given the authority, since we're not meeting next week, once we have even more solid numbers, if he is given that authority to make that adjustment, you're going to have all the documentation, and whatever balance is coming back 9/30 anyway. So that's that simple.
We're not meeting next week. I believe that if the sheriff believes that he needs a zone, a comfort zone, a sliding scale, because basically this whole discussion has sounded like a bridge loan. And we're not going to meet next Tuesday.
Right.
And every storm has a personality, and every response to the storm has a personality. And Sheriff, I just want to say that I think that we've gotten a great response in protecting and serving our community. The men and women did it. And I don't want this debate to be whether they're going to get paid, we're going to make payroll or not make payroll. Almost sounds like a butcher shop, and that's not what it's about. I understand that my fellow commissioners want to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar, as we should. Okay, it's a mandate. But you're going to get reimbursed from FEMA eventually, and that check will be returned back to the Board of County Commissioners, correct?
Correct. So it's a bridge from the county to me and FEMA to the county.
And if that's being the case, we have to put full faith and confidence on your request. And I think I see someone else there that handles the numbers, and I believe that they have been accurately reported. We have not had the opportunity to see them. So we now have a choice of debating, well, we haven't seen any numbers, so we don't know, but we do have an opportunity. We have 2 more public hearings. We could revisit this very meeting a little later on. We can defer this and have the opportunity to look at those numbers that you say you have, and perhaps maybe we will have a refreshed approach and a wider view as to your request. Just a thought that, yes, I agree, we have not had the opportunity to review them. Nobody's questioning your decision-making, your authority, or your request. It just seems to be an abundant one if you compare 2004, when we've had month-long events, and the request was just slightly larger than this 1-week request.
Yeah,
So and we're comparing and contrasting, and I don't think it's fair and appropriate. I would like to see the men and women get paid. I would like to see the sheriff's office maintain and be whole. And at this point, it's September.
Right. So we know a finite number through payroll at 11:59 p.m. on 9/10. So we are in the middle of a pay period. So the unknowns for me to say this amount, that's like saying what's your payroll going to be in the middle of a pay period. We don't know that. I can't give you those numbers right this second.
Would anybody like the opportunity to be able to digest the numbers, to have a freshened approach after the public hearing? We would have a 15-minute break to be able to look at the numbers and perhaps make a more accurate and finite assessment of what the sheriff is requesting, because we have not had the opportunity to review it, and if that's a stumbling block, I'd like to eliminate it.
I don't know that I'm going to be able to have those in 15 minutes.
No, well, we have 2 public hearings.
Right.
And I see
What
the person
public
does the
hearings are you
numbers.
referring to, Mr. Chairman?
We have 2 public hearings coming up.
Right.
So after those, we can revisit this with the sheriff, and I'm sure by that time, he can have those numbers. He said he has them, he just hasn't had time to get them printed. Perhaps maybe we can review them then, Sheriff?
That or 501 tomorrow could be discussed.
Mr. Chair, what if we have a good number through the 9/10 number? Is move that, the discussion is from 9/11 forward.
Correct.
Break it into 2 pieces. One we know, move that, and then address the second portion. I know,
Sheriff,
so I have to let that.
If you believe that that's an appropriate action, and you believe that this number will carry you through that, I have no objection of calling a special call meeting to make this happen.
Okay.
I just want you to know that.
Yes, sir.
Okay? My concern is to show the public that we're being good stewards, but more importantly is compare us to any other county. Compare us to any other jurisdiction. You see what's going on in the news. Whenever time there's a national disaster, a natural disaster, there is national concern. And we have not had that. So that has to account for an awful lot. So I would like to give that as much latitude as possible and be able to bring it back if necessary. But I would like to hear from you that number that's been suggested now by motion can carry you through to a point where we can make an additional decision if necessary, and you will then have all those numbers and facts.
I think Mr. Brown.
To the making payroll, now, I don't want to second guess them, and Sheriff and Kelly, please correct me if I'm wrong, but by my calculations, the pay period, the next payroll would be October 13th after that, which would be well after our next regularly scheduled October 3rd meeting. And on that October 13th payroll, there should be payroll for the 25th through the 30th, which is 6 days. So normally, just rough figures, that should be $500,000 or $600,000 payroll normally that they're going to have to make. So I say that all to say that if we give $500,000 in the first wave, there shouldn't be by my rough calculation, there shouldn't be a cash flow issue because there should already be 500,000 or 600,000 coming that next pay period anyway that they would have in the regular draw. So we'd have to be over $500,000 short of where we are. The number would have to be over $1 million, I think, for us to have a shortfall for the September 29th payroll. So I think the 500,000 should address anything that would be within that next September 29th payroll. If we need to get extra money, there's time to get that before the following paycheck, which would be October 13th, which would be which would include the last pay for September 30th for the year.
So you're suggesting that we exhaust all of the other dollars that we had anticipating absent a storm to satisfy some of the needs that we have?
I'm just saying, as far as the characterization has been, we just want to make payroll. I'm thinking the 500,000 should cover that September 29th payroll. And then if the number needs to be larger than that, we can get that to you well before the next payroll of October 13th. You know, whether it's a special call or at tomorrow's budget hearing or even on October 3rd if need be. I think we can address, if the 500,000 isn't enough.
So any of the other expenses and any of the other outstanding encumbered bills that we're not going to be able to pay, how do you suggest we pay for those? Because that 500 is going to be used for the overtime.
I'm just saying that if you were to get a total budget amendment from us, it would have to be, outside of everything else, you're going to have a payroll on October 13th, correct, which is in our new fiscal year, but you've still got 6 days of your old payroll in it. That, correct, to me, that rough number should be $500,000 or $600,000 that you have to make regardless, because that's we're outside of Alpha Bravo and all that stuff, and that would normally be $500,000 or $600,000 that would normally be included in your budget. So I'm just saying the question of, is this enough to make payroll for the 29th? I think the 500,000 should address that. And if the number needs to be bigger, we can get a bigger number to you prior to you're running into a cash flow issue for making payroll.
And when do you suggest that date be? Since we're not meeting.
The chairman's offered to have a special call meeting.
Okay.
Sheriff, you're one phone call away from a special call meeting.
You know, that's direction, and I understand that. That, you know, we're making a deal out of something that I am going to return the dollars anyway. We're having the meetings, we're having these debates. You've got a proven track record of 8 or 9 budget years where dollars have been returned. And then we're splitting hairs, and the reflection on the community is a public safety, whether we want to admit it or not. And I've got to go back and speak to the troops about, you know, don't worry, we're going to get paid. This storm came at a horrible time of the fiscal year. We get that. Some of the other things that we have encumbered, we'll scratch those. But listen, this is a community, this is a county. We share the dollars. It's not like the dollars aren't going to come sooner or later from FEMA. It's not like we got $40 million in reserve. That is why we have a reserve for rainy days and windy days.
I think we have to see if this passes first, and if it doesn't, we come up with another motion.
Well, you know, we won't know the final numbers for the 29th payroll until the end of day 24th. So meeting tomorrow or Wednesday won't do us any good because we won't have the final numbers. But I think the 500,000 will let the sheriff meet payroll, and we have an open Tuesday on the 26th. So, you know, I'd be fine going ahead and scheduling a special call meeting right now. That would be 2 days after the close of payroll, but before the end of the fiscal year. And hopefully we'll have final numbers then, and we can sit down and figure it all out then. So
just do a special call on the 26th.
What we'll do is
I think we ought to go ahead and schedule it now, just so the sheriff knows and we all know.
Wait for the sheriff's call.
Well,
the sheriff's going to let us know.
I'll be here the 26th.
Will you restate that motion?
It's just currently that we authorize 500,000 pending Jason's review of the numbers the sheriff says he has to cover the payroll on the 29th. And then we will readdress the 520,000 overtime from the payroll of the 15th And kind of just any other issues that we need to clear up at the end of the day, at the end of the year
Okay.
for the sheriff's budget.
Good motion.
And just, I've got a FAC conference starting Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week.
So if we need one, we'll call it on
that's-
Tuesday.
That's why
I'll wait for the sheriff's
recommend.
call. The sheriff was going to let us know after he has all the review, has all the numbers from his Office of Management and Budget. If it has not built the full bridge, he will come back to us, he will call, we will set a special call meeting for Tuesday, but not do that today in the thoughts that it may not happen.
Well, it'll have to happen. He's going to have
Yeah,
the money.
I'd rather
I think he's
commit-
gonna want it to happen.
Yeah, I'd rather commit to having it set.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
So we'll announce a special call meeting, Sheriff.
Yes, sir.
One other question, if I might, Mr. Chairman, with the three fiscal day calendars left for the postponing procurement you're going to have to put in place till you actually have the money, you're going to have to take some things out of purchasing or whatever else is taking place for the rest of the month.
Correct.
That'll only give you 3 days to resurrect those, get them approved, get those funds expensed.
Yeah,
And
so
that-
we have, as Mr. Brown mentioned, we have 6 days going into the next fiscal for the month of September. In other words, the 25th through the 30th will be paid on the 13th.
Correct.
So those have got to be encumbered as well. But I will tell you, there's some things that, I'm going to head back to the office now and we're going to have to pull.
Right, because until you know you have the money, you can't.
Correct.
Is there any big FRS deposits or insurance or, because you have the overtime, then you have all the backup.
Correct.
Additional expenses that are related to the front end.
Correct. That is, the FRS and the FICA do obviously draw up the overtime.
We do have another $4 million plus draw coming October 1st for the new year, but for cash flow purposes, it's all the same.
Yeah, that's October 1st.
Okay. Well, we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Solari, to allocate the funding for the sheriff for his payroll budget of $500,000.
Up to $500,000 pending the administrator's review of the sheriff's documentation.
Okay.
Does that,
Please go ahead.
sorry, sir, and I know Commissioner O'Brien had originally in a motion stated that the $525,000 would be dealt with at another time. Do you want to state that the additional monies would be dealt with at the special call meeting on the 26th, or do you not want to incorporate that directly into your motions?
We can incorporate it, that we'll true up the sheriff's budget at a special call meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Could it be before the 26th if need be? I'm just thinking
That's
of
why I
these
didn't
back
want to
in.
set it right now,
Okay.
because the special call can be done at any time, and all it takes is a phone call, and we can have a special call.
We won't have final numbers till the 24th, so it's doesn't make sense.
It could
to
be
do one
Monday, it could be
before that.
Tuesday. I'd rather leave it on latitude as opposed to
as soon as you have them,
a direct number.
Okay, we'll get to work.
So the special call meeting will be to be announced. It could be Monday as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Sheriff. As soon as you have those numbers, we would appreciate it. You're going to convey them to the county administrator, and we'll have the opportunity to have further review, if necessary, at a special call meeting. Thank you.
All right, now remember that those final numbers, that payroll period doesn't end until 11:59 p.m. on the 24th of September, Sunday night.
You told me you hired the best, so I think we'll be able to calculate it to
I hope so.
Almost to the nearest dollar.
I hope so.
And we stand ready to meet with you whenever you've got the numbers ready, Sheriff.
Absolutely,
So
at any time.
We'll jump right on it.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak on behalf of the sheriff's request?
Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen. Joseph Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting in Atlantic Coast Building. I'd like to speak in support of the sheriff's request. Based on previous history that we've had with the sheriff coming up with the figures that he had to support, he's always been able to do that for the past several years that I'm familiar with. I think based on that past performance and based on the history we have with the Sheriff's Department, I don't think that we need to really question the fact that he's going to come forward with those figures. I think that the only thing that stands between us and other counties and us and being uncivilized is the Sheriff's Department. In emergency times, we can't have anybody second guessing the sheriff approving protecting our well-being in this county. And I think he's done that over the years very well. I've had several calls from different organizations that I represent, and they've all raved about the performance that we've had from our Sheriff's Department. I think that, in all good faith, gentlemen, I think we need to support the sheriff's request, and if it's over, under, he's going to provide the numbers that we need, and if he's going to return the money, he's going to return it. But I think this sends out a tremendous message to our county and to our residents here that rely on the sheriff, keeping them safe. I would support the sheriff's request, and I would quit playing games with these numbers. So in all due respect, I support the sheriff's request, and I think you should too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ballin. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Thank you, Commissioners.
Seeing none?
Mr. Chairman, just one last statement for myself before the sheriff leaves. I'm going to be voting no on the motion in favor of a higher dollar amount. We'll see how the vote goes, so don't get too far. I'd rather see closer to 700 to close that gap so those year-end purchases can go forward. So I will be voting no in favor of a bit higher number, so let's see what happens here.
And please don't misinterpret my vote.
I understand, Chairman.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried 4-1 with Commissioner Zorc dissenting.
Thank you, Commissioners. See you next Tuesday or before.
At this time, we will take a brief recess, and we're returning back to the public hearings.
State statute requirements, and then the representative from the Board of County Commissioners and the constitutional officers will comprise a committee as necessary to approve or administer the plan to make any decisions consistent with state statute. It's really the only change other than just removing all the references to ICMA and Mass Mutual, Hartford Life, and the like. We just want to make sure that the ordinance code change was consistent with the new approach and policy of the board.
Thank you, Counselor. Board, any questions?
Are we happy to move the deferred compensation?
Wait, no, we have to open up the
After
public hearing. Seeing none from the board, we will now take the opportunity to open up a public hearing. If you choose to speak, please state your name and address for the record.
Jeff Smith, Clerk of the Court and Comptroller. I just want to thank Dylan and his office for doing this for us and constructing the language. Again, we're just trying to get the ordinance up to date with changes that we've made going to one provider. We're just removing the reference to all providers out there in case we change providers in the future and making some other minor changes in the wording. So thank you for his assistance.
Well, it all began with your voice. So thank you.
You're welcome.
In return. Anyone else wishing to speak regarding this ordinance change? Seeing none, the public hearing will now be closed. And we have a motion.
Compensation ordinance change.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. Any further discussion amongst the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 4-0, and with Commissioner Zorc absent.
I want to thank the board. I also, just to Jeff Smith's comments, I want to thank Diane. I want to thank the HR department. Just everyone came together to get this done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item is on the agenda is a request by Conover Acquisitions Corporation to rezone approximately 9.66 acres from CL Limited Commercial to PD Planned Development and to obtain conceptual PD plan approval for the project to be known as Vero Beach Square, located at 5125 20th Street. As we go forward, this is quasi-judicial in nature, so I need to announce that the parties involved in the proceedings are Indian River County and Conover Acquisitions Corporation. I'd also need to take the opportunity to ask my fellow commissioners if they can disclose any ex parte communications, site visits, or independent investigations, and we'll begin with Commissioner Solari.
Mr. Chairman, I have eaten at Sonny's Barbecue, but I've had no specific site visits to the property under discussion. I can't keep an open mind, and I have had no other communication or discussions that I can remember about this proposed project with anybody.
Thank you. We'll get to the second part at a later time.
Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman,
O'Brien?
I've had no ex parte communications. I've driven by the site about 1,000 times, but not any specific review of the property.
Thank you. Commissioner Adams?
I would echo the other gentleman's comments, no specific review or any other information. And I can keep an open mind.
And Commissioner Zorc?
Yes, I have and I will. One disclosure, I had met with some other investors doing a project somewhere else. From a conversation from that, someone that's, I believe, part of the hotel development of this site called me with we had a question about natural gas. It wasn't about the site plan, but I do feel I need to just disclose that brief conversation.
Well, I don't even know these guys, so I haven't had any ex parte communication, site visits, or independent investigations. And now I'll start with Commissioner Zorc. Can you confirm that you can keep an open mind and are able to base your decision on the evidence presented and applicable law?
I have and I will. And actually, one other disclosure I should make. A prior site plan application to this site, I did see, and I think I might even have sat in as a fly on the wall in a meeting where they were just talking about that particular. I think this is a completely new project, and maybe some related parties, but that was another prior contact, but different application.
And you had no verbal input on that?
No. And I have and I will if I haven't said that.
Thank you. Commissioner Adams?
Yes and yes.
That'll be good. Commissioner O'Brien?
Can and will.
Can and will, Mr. Chairman.
And finally, I can and I will. With that in mind, we will now open the public hearing. And at this time, if there's anyone that wishes to speak or have input on this matter, since this is quasi-judicial, you need to be sworn in by Madam Clerk. So please rise and raise your right hand so that you can be sworn in as a speaker.
And I encourage anybody who even remotely thinks about, thank you very much, Mr. Paladin.
Is there anybody else? We're getting more. Good. There we go. All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you all for your participation. At this time, we'll have a presentation by county staff. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Stan Bowling, Community Development Director. This is a PD plan development rezoning request that comes before you all through a public hearing process. A PD rezoning involves a conceptual project plan, which is in this case has been submitted, as well as a more detailed preliminary PD plan. The Planning and Zoning Commission have seen all of that information and are recommending approval of the project. And you all are looking at the rezoning action itself this morning. If approved, it'll move forward with the horizontal development covered by a land development permit and vertical development covered by building permits. The subject site is 9.66 acres located on the south side of State Road 60 between 58th Avenue and 43rd Avenue. And on this location map, you can see the zoning districts between State Road 60 and the main relief canal right-of-way and 58th Avenue all the way over to 43rd Avenue. It's all commercial area, either commercial PDs such as the Sam's and the Walmart sites, as well as the Sonny's restaurant site, or limited commercial. In this case, the site is currently zoned limited commercial, but they're in for a few reasons with a plan development rezoning, which is allowed. This is an aerial of the site itself, heavily wooded, right between Applebee's here to the west and the Sonny's to the east. And again, it covers about 9.66 acres. You can see also on this aerial the main relief canal right-of-way, 300 feet wide until you get to residentially zoned properties on the south side of this particular site. This is the land use map, and the red areas are showing the commercial industrial land use designation. Properties across the canal to the south are residential, as well as on the north side of State Road 60 residential as well. The reason for this request, they have a tire store that's proposed here, but also a restaurant with a drive-through facility, which is not allowed in the CL district, but is allowed through the PD request. Actually, a similar request years ago was approved for the Sonny's restaurant so they could have a drive-through restaurant, and that's immediately to the east of this site. With this particular proposal, there's a 110-room hotel proposed, as well as a multi-tenant strip building, standalone restaurant, and a restaurant with a drive-through, as well as a tire store. This is the overall site plan, State Road 60 here being to the top, Main Relief Canal being to the south. You can see kind of in the, towards sort of the middle of the site, the green building shown retail restaurant, as well as a tire store here to the east. And the larger building to the south, the hotel itself, shown in the kind of the gold color. One of the things I do want to point out with this particular plan, it works out well for a lot of reasons, but in terms of buffering, the stormwater ponds and a larger separation from the south properties to the south, the residential properties, the particular location of the stormwater area provides buffering, and the hotel use here is still pretty well separated from the south property line. Kind of in context of the aerial development, there will be an interconnection with the existing driveway stub out at the south end of the Applebee's parking lot, and a stub out connection to the existing stub out at the Sonny's driveway. Sorry to all those folks that like to use that as parking during lunchtime, but that will be an interconnection right there. Also wanted to point out a few things about State Road 60. One of the items and one of the improvements is for extending a turn lane down by Stewart Lane over by the auto parts store here. That particular improvement will be in this area, but will be a benefit for this project. In terms of phasing of the project, the first two phases involve some restaurant and retail, as well as a tire store. And the second phase being the hotel, even though this hotel building is a larger project, so it'll probably, could very well be under construction at the same time as phase one, but phase one would be CO'd and completed before actual construction is completed on the hotel itself. So you might be seeing the construction going on at the same time, which would be fine. The first phase will involve all the major infrastructure areas for the main north-south driveway, as well as the stormwater for the entire project, entire site. And then the phase three being this kind of northwest portion of the site itself. In terms of landscaping, again, really good separation from the commercial uses to the property line to the south, with the stormwater pond area here and dry stormwater area. A pretty robust buffer, type B buffer with a 6-foot opaque feature along the south property line, and trees also planted around the stormwater areas as well as a type B buffer and 4-foot opaque feature along the State Road 60 access. That's all in compliance with the commercial, with the corridor plan regulations for State Road 60. With respect to traffic circulation, a few things that I wanted to point out on the slide. One is there will be an eastbound right turn lane into the main project entrance right on State Road 60. And this is set up as an exclusive driveway, so there are no parking spaces immediately off of this driveway. That reduces any conflicts. Someone, especially someone going to the hotel, pull in through here, they'll be able to see all the way straight through to the hotel where that is, as well as where the different retail and restaurant and the tire store are located in this particular area. Again, interconnection to the existing Applebee's stub out and the Sonny's barbecue driveway stub out connection. So you'll have interconnections to the west and to the east, and an exclusive drive here all the way down to the south end of the property itself. Also, as we mentioned in staff's review, one of the recommendations with this stub out, and here again is the project, the subject project connecting to the Applebee's property here, and this is a driveway that goes through the Walmart parking lot. Again, another exclusive driveway. Exclusive driveway north-south, otherwise known as 53rd Avenue, going up to the signal at State Road 60. One of the proposed improvements is to extend the storage lane here for left turn movements, and that's something that I'll discuss in a little bit more detail, but that's actually on the Walmart site itself. So Walmart would need to agree to that improvement, and that's an option that the applicant is willing to fund and commit to with an approval condition. In terms of dedication and improvements, there's a westbound left turn lane extension on State Road 60 at 53rd Avenue signal. Also proposed is an eastbound left turn lane extension on State Road 60 there. Eastbound right turn lane on State Road 60 and right-of-way dedication at the project entrance. The northbound left turn lane extension on the Walmart driveway, and basically a condition for a 2-year construction bond to be posted to allow time to secure Walmart's approval or their disapproval if they don't want to allow for that. External sidewalks and internal sidewalks, an entire pedestrian system for all the uses and buildings on the site, hooking into the external sidewalk system, and also recorded access easement with Walmart, which is basically being held in escrow pending approval by the board today. That'll be legal documented access to hook into the what's otherwise known as 53rd Avenue south of State Road 60 and all the Walmart access areas. With respect to the stormwater plan, there is a wet stormwater pond proposed kind of in the southeast portion of the project and a dry stormwater pond in the west portion of the project. Again, that's being built up front and will accommodate all the runoff proposed from the entire build-out of the development. With respect to environmental issues, there are no uplands on the site or jurisdictional wetlands. There are tree protection measures that do apply, and this proposal is actually preserving a very healthy, large live oak tree with extra green space around it, as well as relocating some oak trees and cabbage palms on the site. Just in terms of the corridor plan requirements, some of the architectural plans that have been reviewed to give some articulation to the hotel building, just showing you some examples here. These samples don't show foundation planning, landscaping that'll be put along the base of the buildings themselves, and these are representations of the retail and strip center buildings. And again, where we have blank walls on a few of the elevations, there'll be extra foundation plantings just kind of simply to screen these particular areas, but these are the more aesthetic ones that will be more prominent toward public view. In terms of public benefits, actually what's proposed is a more enhanced than required tree preservation plan and turn lanes along State Road 60 that I've described before. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend that the board approve the PD rezoning, and the applicants agreed to all the recommended conditions. So staff's recommendation is that the board grant the PD rezoning conceptual plan approval with the conditions listed in the staff's report that deal with getting final architectural plans, the recorded easement with Walmart, final tree mitigation plans, final design on the turn lane extensions that have been described, and to install all the required improvements. Be glad to answer any questions that the board may have.
Is there any questions of staff from the board?
So Stan, the biggest difference here as far as uses on the site The main one being the drive-through aspect for the restaurant,
That's correct.
and then the tire store.
The tire store is a conditional use that would have had to go through a few extra steps, and they're just kind of rolling that into this to get it all approved at once.
Okay. And then we already have the, is the Applebee's drive-through as well?
No, it's not.
It's not, okay, but the Sonny's.
Sonny's is, and they went through the PD process.
All right, so there is already existing drive-through relatively close to
That's
this
correct.
area. Looking at the P&Z minutes, a couple residents had commented on noise. Were they north of 60 along 53rd Avenue, or were they south of the
These are
canal?
mostly people to the south concerned about it.
On the other side of the
We
canal?
heard from both sides, but again, just wanting to get more information, how far away from the perimeters of the buildings,
Mm-hmm.
do we require shielding of parking lot lighting, which we do. But in this case, you don't have any large loading docks or loading areas. We don't have those kinds of uses proposed. So I think that also, again, I don't know that any came to this particular hearing, but I think they got the answers they needed at the P&Z
Okay.
meeting.
All right, good. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Solari.
Stan, on the noise issue, can you put up your graphic again, please? And the distance from any building or anything that would be out
Sure.
there to across the canal is probably 100,
Yeah, good
Plus
point,
feet?
Commissioner.
And it's-
The canal right-of-way itself is 300 feet. You
Okay.
have, to this point here for the hotel building, over 150 feet, so you're 450 to 500 feet here, and you're probably at least 700 feet to these buildings here.
and it may be just me, but all the hotels I stay at are pretty dang quiet, and especially at night, so I think that any neighborhood concerns are more than met with this. On the hotel, if we grant the PD, the hotel is required for that space?
Right, unless they come in for a modification.
Okay, I mean, and for me, the idea of having another hotel in Indian River County is a big plus. I believe, we had the big issue with short-term rentals in the past, and I believe, part of short-term rentals is driven by the fact that we spend a lot of time trying to become a tourist community, driving tourism, but we don't have enough beds to supply everybody that wants to come. So I think this will be, a hotel would be a great addition to the community, and given the closeness to Dodgertown, which again is a county property which likes tourism, I think it's well placed for that. So I'm very happy to see that. Mr. Chairman, that's it for me right now.
Commissioner, some of us stay at hotels that don't have everybody go to bed at 7 o'clock too.
It may seem strange, but when I go out of town, I stay up to sometimes 8:30 or 9.
No.
Yeah, really.
I don't believe that, not at all.
Bob's a big backpacker, so he doesn't really have any discerning. Let's see, at this point, is there anybody that wishes to question staff regarding this matter from the applicant? Seeing none, now we'll move on to a presentation by Conover Acquisitions Corporation.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Chris Holland, Kinley Horton Associates, 445 24th Street, Vero Beach, Florida. We don't have a presentation prepared. We have worked hand in hand with staff and just appreciate all the efforts that they've put forth to get us to this point. So I'm here to answer any of your questions and just appreciate working with the county.
Commissioners, any questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to have a question of the applicant? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Is there any input from the public independently? Are there any questions by commissioners, county staff of Conover Acquisitions Corporation? We'll now move forward with final presentation or argument, if any, by county staff.
Nothing further.
You rest. Conover Acquisitions. At this point, I'd like to ensure that all documents and tangible evidence have been admitted into evidence and are in the hands of the clerk. Is there anything that's been presented that has not been conveyed to the clerk? Madam Clerk?
There were no additional documents presented at this hearing, so the clerk should have all the documents.
County staff and agenda materials are automatically admitted into evidence unless there is an objection. There is no objection. And at this point, I'd like to close the public hearing. Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and move staff recommendation to approve the proposed PD rezoning conceptual PD plan with the conditions that are listed in the staff backup.
Second. That's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by myself. And any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner Zorc absent. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you, Stan. Yes, appreciate that. Next item is with the, we have public discussion items, and we have a request to speak by Ms. Wanda Scott from the Gifford Economic Development Council regarding Gifford Economic Development follow-up. Good morning, Ms. Scott. Welcome back.
Good morning. Give me just a moment. Don't mind if I sit firm. My knees are in kind of bad shape today, so I'll be right here at the podium. Good morning. I'm Wanda Scott. Oops, I put this on. I need beef. 4306 26th Avenue from Gifford, Florida. And I come to you today. Oh, maybe I better stand up. Just a moment here. Without a, I come to you today about the economics of Gifford, Florida. I think Mr. King is in, well, I guess he left. I had some things about the storm, Hurricane Irma. Just a little overview about me. I'm a disabled veteran, longtime businesswoman, Republican, and I just been escalated to be a civil rights leader. It had something to do with the red hair. Anybody notice I have red hair? It's called Arrest Me Red. So anyway, feeling kind of down, so I just changed my hair. So I'm here to talk to you today about a community that's about 450% below the poverty level. The storm that hit Hurricane Irma, ooh, that was really devastating, as well as Indian River County. Now, I speak and I represent Gifford. There are other people, because that speaks for the other areas, but our areas is pretty much without representation to really the people that, the things that are going on, and I come before you to be that voice. One of the things we have, like in the military, we have a card called a SWOT. It's strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. And you need to identify those in any organization, in any community, and that's what Gifford Economic Development does. I'm not just only on the Gifford Economic Development Board, I'm on a number of other organizations. And I'm also Ebony News correspondent. And I'm escalated now to be an investigative, sorry about that, investigated correspondent. And now I also work with other correspondents. One of the things that impacted us most was, I am so sorry about that phone. Okay. One of the things that impacted us most was the communication, and I know that a lot of people did not have power, but we did notice a flip-flop with the restoration of the electric from the city of Vero Beach. They were faster than FP&L. Who would figure? But anyway, we had more restoration of power from the city of Vero Beach, maybe because of the feedback from the last storm. So feedback is good. So that's why I'm here, to share some feedback. But we still had a gap with power outages when people returned from shelters, and then they still had power out. And then shelters was one of the things that the people in Gifford said, because there's 63% of the people are pedestrians. That means they don't have an auto, or if they have an auto, they don't drive. They, when it was time for, mandatory evacuation or for shelters, they had nowhere to go because most people anticipated Gifford Middle School was going to be open for shelters. And because they had no power, many people just kind of wondered for a little bit. I didn't know where to tell them to go. I didn't know. So maybe it was on the news, maybe it was on the radio, I don't know. But we had a lot of people that felt unsafe because they wanted to get into shelters. I don't know if that's a thing in the future to consider Gifford Middle School as a shelter for Guilford, because we have about 63% of the people that are not driving, that have no transportation to run to Vero Beach or to run to Sebastian. So there was a gap there. But we dodged a bullet.
Ms. Scott, I personally did, and I know that my fellow commissioners personally visited many of the shelter areas. It's not lawful to mention who was in the shelter at the time for some obvious reasons, but I will state that I saw many citizens that I am personally familiar with within the area which you're discussing. In addition, we're getting high grades for the availability of shelter space, the service, the commitment, and the transportation, as well as the health care provision and food accommodations that were not seen in many other jurisdictions. So the availability was there, and they were abundant. I see the chief is here, and he may even have numbers as to how many in attendance were there. So I don't believe that you have accurate information on your account of our shelters, and it was well reported. It was discussed here when we were going to open up shelters. It was discussed on the radio, and it was discussed on social media, and also all of the sheriff's deputies had that information available. And quite frankly, the only concern I have is that we might have relied upon social media. Everybody's giving high grades for social media during the hurricanes, when the first thing you lose is, when you lose power, you lose computer. When you lose computer, you lose access to the social media and the phones, and it's a declination of availability. But quite frankly, the old 2D cell radios are still the course of communication, and people were listening to the radio. So I would argue the availability and the user access to shelters, they were well attended, and again, we'll probably hear an account from the chief as to the final numbers of attendance in our shelters. Thank you.
And I thank you regarding Gifford and the people, the many people that said that it would have been a good idea if they could have walked to Gifford Middle, And then they were told it was at what was it, the Freshman Learning Center, and then there was one in Sebastian. They were everywhere, that it was unattainable for a person not driving unless they got a ride. So listen, I'm not going to go into.
And we had Goal Line Transportation also to be able to transport the
I'm not going to go
individuals.
into that. I'm
Thank
just
you.
reporting what.
But it's
information
inaccurate,
that
so
was-
I wanted to
reporting
refute
that
it.
was given.
And I don't want the public to believe that what you're
Well,
stating is true.
It's okay, what, you can believe
Thank you.
whatever you want to believe. And I'm just telling you what,
Facts.
there was a gap, and this is fact.
Thank you.
Okay. Consider Gifford Middle School or Gifford Youth Activity Center as a shelter in the future for people who are without transportation.
It does not qualify as a shelter. It does not have the standards necessary, and our emergency management director would have to have that approved, and it is not an approvable site, as it was not built the same way as the new intergenerational facility is not an approvable shelter. There are certain requirements, and that building does not meet it.
Thank you for reporting that. We were looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threat that impacted Gifford before the hurricane and after the hurricane. One of the things of the improvement, like I said, which was the restoration of the city. I was out of power until Thursday, and even though I have transportation, at one point trying to find availability of ice, gas for, for equipment. Please don't interrupt me. Let me just get this through so I can sit down. My legs are killing me and my back is killing me. So I don't really want to go around. I just want to kind of get this out. I do represent the economic portion of Gifford. The impact on our community, these are the things that's why I'm here to talk about Gifford. Gifford Economic Development Council. How do we get back on our feet? Now that's a community where a lot of people do landscaping. They were out of work. I just found out, I think it was yesterday, that they could go to the EOC to claim wages. Is that lost wages?
No, that's an
wrong
inaccurate
information?
statement. No, that
See?
does not exist.
Wow.
Well, that's why you're here.
Yeah, so that's another thing. Communication and clarity was one of the, because we didn't know, not everybody's savvy with the phone. My generation, couple of generations, but you have a lot of senior citizens, a lot of elderly, a lot of people that are special needs. They're not savvy with, they were in bad shape. So, but for the most part, we dodged a bullet. But I wanted to see what we can do, because we do have 2 more storms out there. How do we get food for those people that are on fixed income? Not people that, I'm not talking about people on food stamps, people who are not on food stamps, who expended all of their funds to get their house boarded up, to buy gas, to buy ice, and what do? Some people are retired, some people work, some people work and they get paid, and those who did not work did not get paid. So we have a gap. We got some gaps in our community, and my job is to make you aware, whether you agree with me or not. These are facts that will not change unless you get feedback. The feedback that was given last year, it helped with the restoration of the power with the city of Vero. We had good feedback, but not for FPNL. So I got to give Bart a call and let him know that in some of the areas of the FPNL area, restoration for power took a while. So now, communication and clarity I don't know how that could have, how could we've closed feeding stations. I understand that waste management, good Lord, I am not that important, you know that? Waste management, and I think it was the Red Cross and the Gifford Community Center, they had a feeding right there at the, not the, well, the, right, the church on 45th Street. There was one feeding, and then the bus that feeds the children, that came through. But a lot of people was not aware. They thought that was for the children, that you could get sandwiches, water, and so forth. Is that important to us? Yes. We're a community that's 450% below the poverty level. That means we can't hop back on our feet like you can in Sebastian on the beach. It takes longer. So we need little extras so that we can sustain life and we can move forward. And there were gaps. Agree with me or not, my job is to let you know. Okay? The final fiscal, no. Let's see, just a couple of more things and then I'm gonna sit down. Expectation. Oh yeah, and then the expectation from the community. What could we do if the Gifford School is not available for a shelter? What could we get close in our community, maybe the Gifford Youth Activity Center, so that our people that are walking can go to a shelter? Even if you had a bus, if people didn't know about it, what good did that do? Communication. How do we get communication throughout? Just because a few people know out there on 58, how about the people on 38th Avenue? How about the people on 27th? How about the people near the hospital off of 36th and 35th Avenue? So there was a lot of gaps, but for the most part, the damages were minimum. A lot of the trees throughout the community, that's something maybe we can consider a maintenance for those trees. We have a lot of oak trees and they affected the power lines. Maybe that's why the power was cut off sooner. I don't know. Just bringing that up, something to consider. And then the very last portion of this, I was doing a lot of work before the storm, and I had from the Gifford Economic Development Council, we sent a letter to the commission board and to the sheriff and to Department of Justice, FBI, CIA, and I got most of all the letters, the signature cards that they received their letters. This was before the storm. And I just want to share with you, I'm writing to inform you of an incident that occurred between Lieutenant Kent Campbell.
No, we're not going to hear that here. Ms. Scott, we hear things that we can address here in Indian River County as a Board of County Commissioners, and any interaction you've had, I understand that you've had quite significant interaction with the sheriff or his personnel, and I believe that needs to be kept with the sheriff and the sheriff's personnel. Not here. We will be making no decisions on that. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. I sent a letter to the County Commission Board.
We received your letter and we appreciate it, but
and you have not responded, and so
there's no response that we would be making.
As a and it came from the Gifford Economic Development Council. So the sheriff was here, and
Ms. Scott, we cannot discuss your interaction with the sheriff. I believe that there was an arrest involved too as well.
That's where we get the arrest me rent.
Let's leave that. Let's leave that be.
Okay. Well.
Thank you.
they are here, and on behalf of the outrageousness, I just want to let you know, one very last thing, because of the activity that's going on into the Gifford, Wabasso, parts of Oslo, parts of Fellsmere, the mistreatment, misconduct, you don't have to reply.
Ms. Scott, I'm not going to reply. You're done. Thank you. We are not going to discuss the sheriff's office actions and your interreaction. Thank you very much. Do you have anything else other than the
Yes.
sheriff's office statement?
Yes, I do.
I'm happy to hear that. We are all happy to hear that.
Well-
But there'll be no discussion about any interreaction that you've had with the sheriff's office.
Fine.
That's it.
That's fine. Okay, what I would like for you to just to understand that we're just about at 100 lawsuits that have gone forth.
Ms. Scott,
Ms. Scott.
Ms. Scott, you've spoken for almost
Thank you.
20 minutes.
Thank you.
Just
We-
letting
no,
you know.
we-
That's
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Have a good day.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
thank you. I just wanted thank
Thank
you all
you.
for taking the time to hear me out from the Gifford Economic Development Council. But there are a lot of lawsuits coming down.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. The next item is County Administrator item, which is the collective bargaining agreement between Indian River County and the Teamsters Local 769 for the year of 2017, 2018, the wage increase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we all know, Hurricane Irma bore down on the county last week. Pursuant to Resolution 2016-120 and Section 101.10 of the Indian River County Code, I made a determination to waive tipping fees for certain yard and vegetative waste last week. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead of things. Sorry.
That's the next item?
Yep. No, we're not waiving collective bargaining. Yeah. I'm getting way ahead of myself. Yes. Yeah, I'll let Mike take this one. How about that? You want to cover this?
Thank you, Jason. Michael Zito, Assistant County Administrator. As you're well aware, we did engage in a meaningful sessions with the Teamsters and do present to you the 2.5 living wage adjustment for your consideration.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Solari.
I don't know if Mr. Myers wants to say anything.
Is there any further discussion on the board first?
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Is there anybody in the audience? That's it?
Okay, once again, that's for the coming fiscal year. There is a reopener next fiscal year.
Well,
Yep.
we want to thank all parties involved in their positive effort to bring this to closure so that the men and women who work can be paid equitably, fairly, and on time. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously, 4-0, with Commissioner Zorc absent. County Administrator, you wanted to?
Now you're ready. So with Hurricane Irma impacting the county, I made a determination to waive certain tipping fees for yard waste. As you know, yard waste is free to bring to our customer convenience centers under a certain size and our landfill under 3 inches in diameter. Normally, the yard waste more than 3 inches in diameter is charged $22 per ton. In order to expedite the recovery from Hurricane Irma, I made a determination to waive those tipping fees for a 1-week period beginning last Wednesday through close of business this Wednesday. That prevents a couple of things. It prevents backlogs at the landfill. We want to encourage those folks. Some are residents, some are commercial folks that we don't want them to wait in line to pay a fee because that can result in folks finding other places to put that debris that's less costly and less time consuming. So we have We have done that. I'm asking that you ratify that decision. I'm also, in light of Hurricane Maria that's out there, I think it may be worthwhile considering extending that for a 1-week period. So I would recommend doing that at this time, since we want to do as much as we can to make sure that any potential flying debris is removed from the community prior to the arrival of a potential Hurricane Maria or some other storm that's out there, because it's been a very active last few weeks in the tropics.
And a special thanks to the Road and Bridge crew who made, and again, I think Public Works ensured that there was ease of access to the landfill in appropriate fashion. For many of you may not know that the access was halted due to significant flooding and road disrepair, and it was quickly remedied. We probably lost a day or two in accessibility, and with that, and seeing all the activity in the convenience centers, I think people are carting off their vegetative waste and getting it over to a facility. I can't make the motion, but I think it's a very positive move to move forward another week.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be very happy not only to ratify the action that the county administrator initially took, but to extend the period to September 27th.
Second. Yes, I think it's most appropriate, and I want to thank all the citizens for moving forward and getting rid of a lot of their vegetative waste, because we will begin collection, as you're going to hear at the post report. That will begin this week. I understand some municipalities have already begun their collection process, and I think that people need the flexibility of the time, because they're still working on collecting some of the debris and getting it all together after they've done so much in the aftermath of a hurricane that was anticipated to be a Category 5 and was less than a 1. But they had a lot of preparation to do and a lot of preparation to de-escalate. So let's give them a little more space to get their work done. Thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman, comment?
Yes.
I'd like to give a big shout out, one, to the staff out there at the landfill.
Yes.
On Tuesday, I made 5 truckload runs out there dumping vegetative debris, and every time I got on or off the scale, there was always a very nice thank you, and everybody was kind of, working hard and doing the best they could. A couple times the lines got pretty long, and I know everybody was kind of stressed, but I think the landfill crew out there did a great job, and we're working as hard as they could to keep things moving. And a big shout out to the Republic staff. On Wednesday, I made 6 truckloads to the Oslo Convenience Center. And on Wednesday, they were just taking the brush over the wall. But several of the Republic employees were doing a great job directing traffic, helping people unload, moving people through as fast as they could. And I think they did a great job there as well. And then on Sunday, starting to help some neighbors remove brush, we ended up making another 6 truckload runs to the Oslo Convenience Center. And Republic had opened up the field there where the old convenience center was, and that makes the unloading really easy, because it's going from the truck bed down instead of having to go up over the wall, and that worked very well as too. So I think between our landfill folks, the Republic folks, even the Mr. Mulch guys were keeping things going there pretty good. And I think everybody did a really good job of handling the high volume of loads coming in. So just a shout out to all those involved for doing a great job and under stressful conditions.
Thank you. And based on Commissioner O'Brien's feedback, we're thinking of implementing a maximum allowable trips per resident per day. But
well, our street's almost pretty clear. We're going to save you money where you don't have to have it picked up.
One more trip, he needs an occupational license.
And in all seriousness, that's the least costly option for the county to get the debris cleaned up. And we're always trying to be as fiscally responsible as possible. It costs less to have it done by Republic at the convenience centers and the landfill and Mr. Mulch than to pay the extra outside contractors. So Thank you.
And we also further appreciate anybody carting off their vegetative waste. It is significant. We do pay by the tonnage, and it does save us some funding that we can apply in other areas as we recover from any other damage that was incurred. So thank you. Thank you all. All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by myself. And is there any discussion from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 4-0, with Commissioner Zorc absent. We'll now move on to the Hurricane Irma storm-related vegetative debris pickup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. More debris. So just want to let you know that we did start our special vegetative debris pickup yesterday. By the end of the day, I think we had 7 crews out there picking up vegetative waste. We anticipate this work will continue for the next several weeks. The question of private roads has come up as it does frequently. Last year, if you'll recall, I recommended against pickup on private roads. But the board decided it was in the interest of the county for the public safety, welfare, and economic and physical recovery of the community to make the decision to pick up the debris on private roads. So based on that, we had a similar storm this year. Staff has made preparations to move forward on that as quickly as possible if the board decides to make a determination to pick up debris on private roads. There are certain requirements that need to be met in order to be those pickups to be eligible for FEMA reimbursement. One of those is that the debris removed from the private rights of way eliminates immediate threats to life, public health, and safety. Also, or the economic recovery of the community. A written request must be made to FEMA first. We have prepared that request. You all should have received a copy of that last night. The last item that we're waiting for, if the board decides to approve debris pickup on the private roads, it would be the draft minutes of this meeting. We will send that off to FEMA, get that going through the process as soon as we possibly can. One item of note is that FEMA requires us to receive FEMA approval prior to commencing the work. So much like we did last year, we're recommending we go ahead and pick up on the public roads first, and then once we get the FEMA approval, we can move forward with private roads. Essentially, we've only got as many crews as we can bring here. We're hoping to increase that number as we go. We think just to reduce the potential impact on the local dollars is to move forward with the public roads. We think there's plenty of debris on the public roads to keep those crews busy while we're awaiting any approval from FEMA. So we're recommending that we do that. Also on the county website, we've got the information. If we do the private roads, we've already put out there the right of entry forms. We ask all the private HOAs to please submit new ones. It may seem like overkill, but some of those folks have sent those in last year. We're asking them to do that again because that's what FEMA would like. And we plan to have good information on the county website, ircgov.com, or IRC Recycles. Kind of like last year, if you'll recall, we had the thermometer, like the United Way funding campaign thermometer that shows our progress towards completion. And that is not there yet, but we anticipate getting that up in the next couple of days, along with, if you'll recall, we had maps last year showing the different zones and which zones were complete and which zones were underway and which zones we had not gotten to yet. So we think the more information we can provide to the public, the better. So in the next couple of days, we anticipate having that information up as well. But right now, requesting that the board make a determination whether or not those circumstances exist on the private roadways and make a determination whether or not to pick up debris from private roadways.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
This is one of the few areas where Jason and I have a little bit of disagreement. I understand your reluctance to go for this on private roads. However, and I want to give some sort of criteria that I'd be using for this in case we have future events. I mean, I'll note that this is a county-wide event. This isn't an event which was focused on private roads or public roads. This is an event which hit everybody throughout the community equally. This was an event that took place during a declaration of emergency, which was also reinforced after the hurricane. So we have those two things, and then we have almost a check in FEMA, in that in order to go forward, I believe we need to get the FEMA approval, and that's almost like an objective set of criteria in addition to our own beliefs. But so with those three things in place, I can support going ahead with the private roads. I also, and I believe that there is a life, public safety, and welfare issue, especially with the very, very outside chance of Maria or some other hurricane occurring. I mean, we need to get this stuff off, safely away before any event like that does occur. And there's also sort of the practicality of it. I mean, if we're going to potentially have a much worse problem if we don't countywide address the issue, not only in neighborhoods that can get sort of out of whack because we don't do anything, but people dumping throughout the community and not taking it to the landfill and stuff like that. So for those reasons, I believe it would be appropriate for us to do the private subdivisions if they go ahead and fill out the proper forms. And it's again, definitely the case that they should be at the end, because the priority needs to be public roads, which all of us can drive on, especially if another event does occur. So I think you're absolutely right in your recommendation that they be last, not only because we need the time to get the FEMA approval, but because the priority needs to be all of the public roads from the main arteries on down. So with that, I move we go forward with the pickup through the entire county.
Second. And for this discussion, any subdivision, any HOA controlled jurisdiction will have to provide the appropriate request and right to access so that we are legally able to send a crew in to pick up from the curbside.
I would almost like to add one other thing. If any subdivision that we go into complains because we have workers there at 5:15 at night, let's just pull out.
I don't know if I like the thought, but I don't know if that should be the caveat.
I'll withdraw that addendum.
We do the best we can to get the highest level of participation from the HOAs with their right of entry forms. It's at the end of the day, we don't want to slow down from responding to actually removing the debris from there, but we do ask everyone. It is on the county website right there, the form. You can do it online and submit it. Any officer of an HOA. If you don't have an HOA but you're on a private road, the individual property owners, we're asking them to do that as well, so that if we don't have that, then FEMA will likely not approve the expense, reimbursement of the expense, if we don't have that.
Anything else from the board?
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, then Commissioner Solari, your motion is basically the staff recommendation, that we pick it up countywide, but we don't commence until we get approval from FEMA?
Correct.
Okay, I'm good.
And for clarification, that's the unincorporated area of the county for that, and each of the cities has their own.
Correct.
Right, yeah.
And we're moving forward for that approval with FEMA. That's already in motion.
The letter's ready to go. We'll just want to have the final piece, which would be the board approval, and we've already worked with the clerk to the board to get draft minutes out as quickly as possible, so we'll have that.
Happy to sign it
hopefully
today upon it being completed.
All right.
And signed off by our attorney. Thank you. Anybody from the audience wishing to speak regarding this matter? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously upon motion from Commissioner Solari, seconded by myself, and Commissioner Zorc is absent, so it's 4-0. Thank you. At this point, we will have an update on Hurricane Irma, and I believe the county administrator has something. Is Chief John King available?
He is available to help bail me out whenever I get in trouble. So
Thank
I
you.
anticipate he'll be in here momentarily. Yes, as you know, Hurricane Irma impacted the county last week. We were fortunately spared the worst of the storm. We were looking at one of the strongest hurricanes on record. The entire state of Florida was very concerned, rightfully so. We took emergency protective measures ahead of time. We were fortunate at the end of the day that the track shifted westward and we did not get as bad an impact as we could have. We're thankful for that, and our thoughts and prayers are with those areas of the state as well as those in the Caribbean who got the worst of Irma's ire. So just a couple of stats. We had the highest winds were strong tropical storm force winds for the most part experienced throughout the county. We did receive significant amounts of rain, 8 to 12 inches in some parts, in most of the county. However, in South County, there are reports of as much as 15, possibly 17 inches of rain. We seem to be having some kind of video issue. There we go.
Entertaining.
So particularly the southern portion of the county received a significant amount, as did St. Lucie County south of us, and that impacted some of our drainage areas. Drainage in the southern part of the county. We also had some flooding and high water issues in other parts of the county. Of note, Fellsmere, Vera Lake Estates, Rock Ridge, some areas around there. So basically, some of the stats: the shelter population, our peak was almost 1,500 at the peak. As the storm bore down on us, and the impact was anticipated to be a little less, our population actually went down, more like about 1,165 Sunday evening. We did have special needs clients of 190 with 82 caregivers along with that. A lot of times that's a spouse in many cases, so someone of a similar age who is the caregiver for that person. It's quite the orchestra to get all of that done, all of the transportation and everything that needs to take place to get those folks to a place where they can be safe, and many of those are dependent on electricity and oxygen and things like that for their health. We opened the pet-friendly shelter. We had a total of 215 pets. That does include 60 chickens, which you may have heard about. Our count of non-chicken creatures was about 155 at that location. As a comparator to Hurricane Matthew, we had a little over 1,000 in the shelters for Hurricane Matthew. Some big things: Salvation Army fed over 3,500 meals. They went around to the Fellsmere community. There was some feeding at specific locations, specific items, areas of need identified, Gifford community, throughout the county. And in addition to that, the school board, which was a nice thing, they went around the community with their buses, as we heard about a little earlier today, the buses that they use for their feeding programs during the summer, and I think that was helpful to many folks in need. Volunteers, we had volunteers deployed to, here on the screen you have the pet-friendly shelter, so you can see, and that's quite an orchestra as well. A lot of these things, they're more complex than it seems at first. There's a lot of coordination that needs to take place to make sure that dogs get their walks and restroom breaks and get fed, and everybody gets their time with their animals at the pet-friendly shelter, in addition to all the things that go on at a normal shelter, which is quite a bit to take care of our human guests. Volunteers, great throughout the community. In addition to Salvation Army, there were some volunteers that started putting up blue tarps on people that had roof damage. We have received word from FEMA that we think the Army Corps' blue tarp program will become available here shortly. Electric outages. At one time, FPL had 94% of their customers out, or almost 53,000 customers. I'm happy to report that as of this morning, FPL is reporting they have 10 customers out, which those 10 probably aren't happy, but those are likely, I'm guessing, issues where there's some issue with the electric service on the facility at this point. City of Vero, at the peak, they had almost 99% out, or 34,000 customers out, and they are reporting that they're 100% restored today. So we do some initial preliminary damage assessments. Our building officials, our code enforcement folks go around and do damage assessments for private property out there. In those preliminary damage assessments, there were 72 properties found with minor damage and 6 properties with major damage. Estimated losses $1.5 million. The county public facilities, there were some damages to those. Right now, all of our facilities are open, with the exception of Tracking Station Beach, which had some beach erosion, and Blue Cypress Park because of the high water levels there. So once that water level goes down in Blue Cypress, which may take a few more days, we hope to be able to get that open again. And Tracking Station is going to need some work to deal with the dune loss and the infrastructure there. So you can see some of the damage around the county here in these slides as Scott's going through them. So this slide shows our beaches, another major area that we get impacted in. We had an estimated, once again, preliminary estimates, about $4.3 million in beach loss from Irma, which is significant, but significantly less than we had in Matthew. We had an estimated $11 million impact there. So we're working towards getting that work done. We did have, I think, the first visit on the East Coast from FEMA on the East Coast of Florida on Sunday. So that's moving forward well. Some miscellaneous county building damage, some window leaks, some minor bridge problems. We've got bridge assessment ongoing, got about $150,000, so damages there. Culvert failures of about $175,000, some loss of material on our dirt roads, our unpaved roads, estimated about $100,000 right now. You can see there's the feeding operation by the old Fellsmere School, by Salvation Army. Traffic signals, most of our traffic signals lost power. Just to show the work that those folks do, we get a lot of public safety responses, and that's very important. There's just a lot of other folks working behind the scenes as well. I want to make sure that they get recognized. You'll recall that they were out pulling down those signal heads before the storm. We do that because good learning experiences from 2004, when those signals get knocked to the ground and they're busted, guess what? Everybody needs new traffic signals, and it's hard to get new ones. And it's very hard to get the community back to normal if you can't get your signalized intersections back working. And when you have busted traffic signal heads and you don't have new ones to put up, that was a big problem in 2004. So we go and we take those down. We're still not at the point where we've got all those back up yet. Some of that's where we've been dealing with some intermittent outages, keeping our folks busy. But just to show you the work that they did, on Monday night, right after the storm came through, we had 60% of our signals, or over 90 without power. By Tuesday night, virtually all of them were powered in one way or another. That was thanks to our utilities getting the power back. We had 122 back on municipal power. The other 33 were on generator operating on flash. So that means we've got to go around and refill the generators with fuel. And on the ones that have municipal power, we have to put them back in regular operation to where they're operating. Recovery items, some of the things we've done to help the public recover are, we've got some permit exemptions in building permit. If someone has minor work that needs to be done, whether it's taking out drywall or minor roof repairs or minor electrical work like that weatherhead getting detached, that can be done without a permit. If it's work beyond that, we have an expedited permitting process that is underway. We've had 13 of those so far as of yesterday, where we expedite the permitting, and we just so we think that helps folks get back to normal. The Disaster Recovery Center for FEMA, we anticipate opening that this week. That will be at the Brackett Library, again, just like it was last time. We've notified FEMA of that. We don't know exactly when they will be there to open that up, and they can help out folks with individual assistance, the SBA loans, and the Blue Tarp program, as mentioned. Debris cleanup's underway. We talked about that already. Just in general, I just want to say we were spared the worst impacts of the storm, so we're very fortunate. But I don't want that to undercut the amount of work that was done in order to keep the community safe. There were a tremendous amount of work from county employees, from our municipalities, from our constitutional officers, all of the law enforcement to make sure that the community was safe and is safe, and we are continuing that work to recover. So a lot of folks out there working very hard. A couple of the items, if you scroll back one, Scott, I think. So if you look at this yard, there was a dog tied up in that yard prior to the storm. Some folks from the health department notified us about it. We were sending animal control out there. Fellsmere PD got to us before then, got that dog to a secure location, and the dog would have been pretty tired of swimming by the time things were over. We also had reports of a couple other dogs that were abandoned in their homes. With assistance from law enforcement, animal control got in there, took care of those animals. Another thing is we had moved our Senior Resource Association, helped us out with our special needs shelter. We try to get those folks out of the schools as soon as possible so they can get the kids back to school. I want to say that thanks to SRA for letting us use their senior center in Sebastian. We did have some electrical issues, some real great effort from our facilities folks, Gene and facilities. We got the call from FPL because that facility didn't have power and it was running on generator, but in light of the things that had gone on in Hollywood, I, for one, was very nervous about having our special needs folks in a place without electricity should something happen to that generator overnight. We're having some AC issues, and FPL was great. They worked with us to help get that power restored, but I will say they thought the power was restored, and I notified the folks that power was restored, and they told me it wasn't. So thanks to SRA, to Karen for chasing down the FPL trucks and telling them that the power wasn't there. Thanks to Gene again to convince the FPL folks that the facility indeed did not have power, and we got that situation resolved so we could have power restored there. Our first responders were great, of course, throughout the storm. We did have a couple of, we did have Brian and Corey go out in the height of the storm when we could not roll ambulances anymore. A couple of things, they provided care to a 1-year-old on a ventilator. They were also able to transport a lady who was in labor to the hospital, and there's our happy new family there. And that was in the height of the storm. I did see where St. Lucie County was going out there in MRAPs and doing that. Our folks did it in a pickup truck, so just saying. We're tougher than St. Lucie County folks. But you know, just some really good stories there. Another one is there was a multifamily housing unit with many with well over 100 residents there. Once again, not an assisted living facility, but an over 55 community that had many folks that were in hospital beds on the 3rd floor in a facility with no power. Health department made us aware of that, and we rolled fire rescue 4 engines, an ambulance, BCs, assistant chiefs, the sheriff's office helped respond to that. The fire department ran fans to ventilate the area. Everybody came together. We worked with city electric folks to make sure that they could get power restored, and I think in about 45 minutes they had power restored. They were out of food and water. Salvation Army brought food and water, and all the way down to there was a waste management issue. We were able to have SWID go help resolve a waste issue that was going on there as well. So that's just an example of everybody kind of coming together and making something happen, and that happened over and over again. There are dozens of other stories I could tell you here, and I want to make sure everybody else that was out there working in the field knows how appreciated all the work was. And just across the county organization, the schools stepped up huge for our shelter needs, as well as working with the municipalities. All cooperated and our nonprofits such as the Salvation Army. I know I'm leaving people off. But that EOC, it really is a great thing to witness. The analogy I've heard is that like Etta, who's just dynamite, along with Rachel and John, they're up there and they're kind of the conductors, and everybody else is playing their instrument. And no one person can get everything done that needs to be done, but everybody working together can get something done. And I'm not that knowledgeable about classical music. Sometimes the people are, the conductor, it just looks like they're waving a stick around, but let me tell you, they're definitely doing their part, and they're making beautiful music. And I just want to say I was privileged to get to watch, to listen to some beautiful music and have that front row seat. And I just can't say enough how great a job all of our folks in the EOC and out in the field outside of the EOC, with the boots on the ground getting that work done.
Thank you, Jason. Commissioner Adams? No? Mr. Bryan?
Yep.
Jason, I just want to say that, you mentioned the other conductors, but I saw you had a stick too. And I have to say that everyone did a great job during this hurricane event, this storm event. And yes, we mentioned the chief, 4.3 hours a day sleep, but yet he kept it moving. The men and women who served, there were countless reports. And what more can you say about Etta? At one point, there was 85 people in that EOC, and then a lot of us left, thankfully. But you allowed us to be able to best serve our constituents who were, some of them were out of the loop. They did not have communication, but they knew who to communicate with. We've heard about some debris removal and hurricane and generators and plywooding. It was a nonstop week. And I want to say, while I was out there, I saw more citizens helping citizens than I had ever before. And it was shades back of Francis and Jean when everybody was topping up homes. They may not have been topping up homes this go around, but they were helping each other, checking on their neighbors, and that's truly what it's all about. We heard some comments about a lack of cooperation. I never saw so much cooperation in this county's history of neighbors drawing lines, helping with trees, getting a generator to piggyback into another home, and then knowing when to take it off. And they truly helped each other. Food runs, gas runs, and the comment about the gas, I just want to give accolades to our governor for ensuring that we had a positive fuel source before the event, during the event, and post the event. I do remember that there was a couple of stations that had to close. They got depleted. We had I-95, people getting off I-95 to get back down south or up north. They were fueling up at our stations, but there was an assurance. He had FHP escort the tankers to the stations. The stations had generators. Gas, if it was not available at 2 o'clock, it was available at 4 o'clock at the very same station. So I just want to give accolades across the board and say thank you, community, because you did it, and without you, we can't do it. Thank you. Anything else from the board? Chief? He did good? All right. Got a thumbs up from the chief, our emergency management director. With that, we'll move on to community development. We have a discussion for a recommendation of an award for an RFP number 2017054, which is in regards to the Archie Smith Fish House dock restoration. Good afternoon, team.
Good afternoon. I'm Roland Du Bois, Chief of County Environmental Planning and Code Enforcement. I do have a brief PowerPoint presentation. This relates to the what's known as the Archie Smith Fish House. It's about a little over an acre at the north end of Indian River Drive in the city limits of Sebastian. Back in 2007, the county acquired it under the Conservation Lands program as an historic property. Here's a picture from 1943. The fish house is in the foreground. This property is on the National Register of Historic Places, which was one of the motivations to acquire it for restoration. When we did acquire it, the county acquired it, it was already impacted by storms. And since that time, there's been efforts to secure the property. For example, there was a house on the opposite side of the road that was removed. The house, the fish house itself, the office on the shoreline was secured. And also, since we've owned it, we were awarded a historic preservation grant, cost share grant, to get an architect who specializes in historic property restorations to do a restoration plan. And what's on the overhead now is the restoration plan for the dock portion, which has a number of components. If you've been out to the site over the years, you know that there's a unique rail trolley that was used for transportation of shellfish along the dock. There's an ice house on the dock itself. So there's various components. The architect who worked with the county staff in coming up with a redevelopment plan included other features such as a future kayak landing, reconstruction of some boat slips, and overall reconstruction of the property. This plan shows in a little more detail the components of the dock. So it's more than just a standard dock facility. There's a lot of various components to it. There's aspects to it that are in substantial disrepair, such as the ice house and the support structure underneath the ice house. But to move forward with incremental restoration, the county did obtain and was awarded a FIND grant through the Florida Inland Navigation District to do a phased reconstruction of the dock. We had initially applied for more money than they were able to award due to their funding limits, but they did award $100,000 towards a $200,000 portion of the dock that we worked with the architect on in identifying. So we do have that active grant which runs through the coming year. To move forward with the dock restoration, we went through a process of soliciting bids. This is a summary of that process. There are 33 firms that requested specifications to the project. Unfortunately, as far as the response, we didn't get many responses, but we did get one from Underwater Engineering Services who submitted the bid, meeting our bid procedures. When we presented the bid for advertisement, because of the different components, we elected to break it down into alternate aspects of the project so that bidders could bid on what we call the core project, but also other components, so we can just get flexibility in what the results were. What we call the core project was essentially the main dock, including electrical and fire protection aspects to it. But we also identified other alternates to look at, including use of materials, synthetic materials for longer lasting purposes, which is preferred for maintenance standpoints. We had an alternate for focusing on the ice house itself as far as the rebuilding of the ice house and the support structures. Other alternates for a wood deck, which is currently a damaged concrete deck that is proposed to be replaced by wood, and other aspects related to the proposed kayak dock and the boat slip restoration. As far as what staff considers the key components, which is essentially the main dock and the ice house, the bidder did submit bids under what we consider the core. It's substantially more than the FIND grant, but it's within the realm of the allocated funds in the county's capital improvement element, which I'll point out. But it is a substantial project, and the total price that was submitted under the bid for the main core piece of the ice house and the dock restoration was $625,698. If you compare that overall to the capital improvements element over the 5-year schedule for overall restoration of the Archie Smith Fish House, which in this case would also include the office residence on the shoreline, the estimate over the 5-year period was $1 million, and here's the breakdown of the allocation of funds over the 5-year period. Some of that would be cost share funds, other parts, optional sales tax, and then boating improvement funds. With respect to the current fiscal year and the coming fiscal year 2017-18, the breakdown is the active fine grant, optional sales tax, and boating improvement funds for $625,000. And that's already in the approved capital improvement element. If you compare that to the bid, it actually falls in line with the core bid amount that we did receive from the bidder. It's actually, the bid was $698 beyond the budgeted amount for the current fiscal year and the upcoming fiscal year. So based on that approach and the incremental approach that we're taking towards this restoration, we felt that it did fall within the allocated budgeted funds. And at this point, we're recommending that the board, let me just point out, when we did get the bid, we also ran it by the architect who did the design work, Altier, to make sure that they felt that it was a reasonable bid based on their expertise in historic restoration. And they did feel that, given the current cost of materials, that it was a reasonable bid. So based on that double check, we are proceeding with our recommendation. That, coupled with the amount that's already been allocated in the capital improvements element, we're recommending the award of the bid to Underwater Engineering Services in the amount of $625,698, and also to authorize the chairman to execute the agreement after county attorney review and receipt of required insurance and bonds. And that's our presentation at this time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. DeBoy. Any comments from the board?
I have a question for purchasing. Afternoon, Jennifer. Just with 33 firms getting the specifications, but only one reply, any feeling as to why we didn't get more responses or wasn't more competitive, or?
Sure. Jennifer Hyde, County Purchasing Manager. We did have a pre-bid meeting. It wasn't a mandatory, and there are actually 2 other firms that attended that. I think and I anticipate that it's mostly just the scope of the project and the busy workload of the contractors out there right now. I guess, is it the ice house itself that's the historic part? I know the overall site is, but because like the dock should be pretty simple forward to build, and is it the ice house that might have unique things as a historic? It has to have certain features that might make it more difficult, or?
There's the 3 main structures. There's the office house that's right on the mainland on the shoreline, which is not part of this bid. There's the dock itself, and then there's the ice house on the dock. I think part of the issue is the substantial restoration need for the ice house itself. It's been damaged by fire. It has support structure issues. It had a concrete poured floor over wood, which is deteriorated. So there's a lot of it ties to the ice house. But as far as what's historic, what's not, I think from the National Register and from the state, they look at the package. They don't necessarily look at the one part, though it is, that is a main feature, is the ice house.
Okay. It just, almost $424,000 just for the dock part, to me just seems outrageously high. And, the $626,000 just to
it just seems like an awful lot of money for what we're getting. And I know there's a lot of work out there right now, but this just seems like a lot of money for what we're getting. And I'm not indicating any blame or lack of what staff did. Just, you know, I'd almost be willing to punt and wait for a while and see if we can rebid this in a year or so and get the price down. But yet, or look at alternatives of trying to do this. But that just in my opinion, just seems outrageously expensive for what we're getting. That's just my gut.
I agree with you, Commissioner O'Brien. I think that separately it might yield a different result, and I think that there might have been more interaction with the bid just on the dock, and we probably would have had a lot more competition out there when we couple the whole project together. Again, this project is going to bring this location back to a usable product, that it will be an operational museum at one point upon completion of all this work.
Yeah, I think the concept that's been out there since we bought the property was to have a combination visitor center, museum, and the main house, an opportunity to use the dock as a landing and access point to the river, a potential meeting house, use of the main house once it was restored. So that's the overall concept, and we've been coordinating with the Historical Society on those aspects once it did get up and running. But that's the long-term vision for the property.
So it will be brought to a level where we would have an attractive for visitors and tourists, and it will be semi-operational so people can see what life was back when.
Yeah, that's the envisionment of what
it won't be an operational facility as with one of the other facilities.
I think earlier on we explored the opportunity for a active fish house, like a demonstration fish house, but as we further looked into it, it's just there's complications with that as far as having a for-profit use of property that was acquired
Sure.
with conservation. So at this point, it's evolved to more of a potential meeting space, visitor center. There's similarities to this in the Jones's Pier as far as opportunities to explore the history of the property and have public access.
Thank you.
First, I would say that the county purchased this property 10 years ago, and I would venture to guess if it was bid out at that point, then the prices would be less. But we are dealing in a new reality as far as the cost of doing business and projects, and I don't think that the $423,000 for the dock restoration is that far off what it would cost anybody else to do that project. That it seems pretty much in line with, I know, what the city of Sebastian and some others are doing with some of their dock projects. The other thing I would mention is that this is in the general area and ties into Sebastian's working waterfront project in that district that they've been working on with improvements to Krabby Bill's and the old Hurricane Harbor. I think it's scheduled in the budget for the 5-year CIE. I think we just need to go ahead and move it forward. If staff is comfortable with it, they've researched it and are presenting this, then I have no problem with that and would like to go ahead and move staff's recommendations.
I'm going to second it for discussion.
And that's a motion by Commissioner Adams and seconded by Commissioner Solari.
I'm going to go ahead and support the motion and vote for it, not because I necessarily believe it's the best use of overall county money, but because the project was the result of a citizen referendum to buy conservation lands. And to me, that gives me a different responsibility than if it was just a regular county project. The fact that the citizens told us to do this. I mean, I think that as I've watched the difference between a conservation land that is just land and a conservation land that has buildings on it, that it's the idea of having the county buy more buildings is not something I would support in the future. But the fact is, we have purchased this property, and it's been sitting there for 10 years with nothing being done. And I believe we have an obligation, not just to the citizens of Indian River County, but the city of Sebastian, to go ahead and stop it from being an eyesore and to put it into the condition that it ought to be in, given the vote of first the Land Acquisitions Committee and then the Board of County Commissioners when we did buy it. So, I mean, again, I think we have a, well, for me, I have a sort of duty to support it, given the history of it. But it certainly, the county getting more buildings of any sort because they're old is probably not something I'd be looking towards supporting in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the board who wishes to speak regarding this decision? Did I see anybody from the public that wishes to add to the discussion as well? Dr. Cox, please. Don't hesitate without delay.
Thank you, Chairman. David Cox, 9495 Periwinkle. When I saw this, I should say first off, I've been a supporter of the acquisition and the restoration of this fish house for a long time.
Yes.
But I am here to ask you to consider to rebid this project, and for two reasons. I went through what was available in the backup, and two things caught my eye. First, the permitting phase of the project, $28,000. Now, I do permitting for marine construction routinely and have for a decade or more. And I think that's about 2.5 times what I would charge. The other point that I would make has to do with the removal of the structure, the pilings, and presumably the stringers and the deck at $100,000. I was just involved with a project, City of Sebastian, it's a matter of public record, the Boudreaux Dock, which is immediately north of the Main Street boat ramp. That structure is 10 feet longer than the Smith structure. And Chris Pinson got the contract on bid through a process not dissimilar from what y'all are using. And he pulled all of the pilings, did the stringers and the decks for $4,000. So that's 25 times more that you guys are paying. I just think that I think that I'm not comfortable with the stewardship of the public funds in this particular project. And I think that it's unfortunate, obviously, that there was only one firm that carried it through to bid, and I certainly don't fault staff.
No.
I know that a couple of local contractors, marine contractors, who for some reason or another didn't see the Demand Star bid on this. If it went out in Demand Star, that I'm not sure. And I'd certainly like to see a rebid process that targeted local contractors from Indian River County rather than St. Lucie. Anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Did you have any questions?
Thank you, Doctor. Any questions of Doc?
Thank you.
The only point I want to make is,
Please go ahead, Roland. Did you have a comment?
I was just going to say that I understand Dr. Cox's comments. Just for the record, I mean, the bid for the permitting also include mobilization. So I don't know how much, we didn't separate that out from the cost. So I'm not sure how much of that is strictly permits versus mobilization for the overall job. Nevertheless, you know, I take Dr. Cox's comments. Thank you.
So there might be additional, there would be additional mobilization and demobilization costs associated with it?
That was just grouped with the permitting fee, so I just wanted to point out that that's not strictly just permitting cost. It's also mobilization for the job. But
Before he
just
speaks,
that one point.
I just want to ask you one other question then. As far as, we've run into the dilemma of replacement as opposed to construction of a dock and permits. Would that come into play if it was removed independently, and which would be quite a significant cost reduction, and then a new dock resurrected?
I don't know that that's, I mean, again, we're talking about historic restoration. It's a complex project. There's a lot of components to it. We have the rails, we have the interconnection of the ice house. We have the support issues with the ice house itself, which is a challenge. So we looked at, again, that was part of the process for coming up with the alternate components, was to determine what we consider as staff as to be the key components. Also part of the mobilization is doing the dock by itself and not doing the ice house. We felt that those were two integral components just from a mobilization and practicality standpoint. If you're going to completely restore the dock and then try to come in later with the ice house, there's complications as far as interconnection and access. So that's kind of how we came to the conclusions we did as far as the key components.
Thank you.
I am PJ
Sir,
Pastor.
your name and address for the record?
Yes, I'm PJ Pastor at Construction Management of Florida. I did make the pre-bid for this particular job. I think the confusion was on the alternates. Since the budget amount was so low, it was almost impossible to meet any of those alternatives within that budget. That is one of the reasons why we withdrew from submitting for the bid. It wasn't very clear that we were going to try to do the whole project at one time, or if we were just going to try to do multiple phases. So that was some of the clarity that we weren't comfortable with. That is why we didn't submit a bid. Just to clarify why you only had one response.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak regarding this matter? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Adams and seconded by Commissioner Solari. I still have tremendous concern about the cost factors associated and being good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. And again, Commissioner O'Brien and I can remember the great acrimony in 2006 when this all began, and it was on voter referendum to move forward, and we haven't done much with it other than make it look cosmetically appealing, and we do need to move forward. But at what expense? It's a tremendous cost factor. That's over $500,000 to make the place nice and to give it what it deserves for the working waterfront, as our commitment was to the taxpayers and the city of Sebastian as well. And we have a great relationship with it, but also wondering if this could be greatly reduced by citizen cooperation, maybe a rebidding of separate entities, separate components, and maybe perhaps there wouldn't be mobilization and demobilization concerns if we had one or more companies that were understanding that they were bidding on separate components. So I understand the options are clear. Again, no reflection of staff, because you have to present it, and you have to present the project as desired, but I still believe it's a little pricey, and I have great reluctance in going forward and committing and approving over $600,000 in one lump, which I do believe it could be a lot less. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Motion fails 2-2 with Commissioner Fleischer and Commissioner O'Brien dissenting.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and make a move that we, a motion that we do not issue the bid as presented and ask staff to go back and maybe take a smaller bite out of this by maybe bidding the removal part of it separately and see if we can get that price down quite a bit and then move forward on the rest of it at a time where we might think we get better bid results.
Second.
Question. What would the time frame on that be? I mean, are we gonna look at another 10 years? Because we could wait and it won't be a problem because it's gonna fall into the water.
Commissioner Adams, good question. It wouldn't be my intent to wait another 10 years.
No.
I would hope that maybe we don't get any more major storms this year, and maybe, you know, sometime this winter, maybe look, see if things have slowed down, and whatever the dock companies are doing now, keeping busy with, maybe they'll get that caught up. But it wouldn't be my intention to wait that extreme length.
Okay, because there has been a lot of inquiries from the Sebastian Chamber, Sebastian council members, and other residents in that area regarding when we're going to move forward with doing something, since we have had it for so long. So
Well,
I appreciate that.
the desire is there. We want this to happen. However, the price tag is getting prohibitive.
It's only going to get more the longer we wait, but I respect y'all's.
If we ask, Jennifer, if we move forward today with a rebidding, can you give us a ballpark figure with the legal constraints as far as posting and return, how long it will take place?
If we rushed it and we had the specs pretty much updated and ready to go, we could get something back before the board 2 months to 2.5 months.
But I thought part of the problem was the demand at the present time. So it would seem to me that waiting about 6 months or so, if the demand, and I certainly don't know, but if the demand for services of this type of construction is great right now, it's not going to be less because of the hurricanes we just had. Right. So I think we need to wait at least 6 months, and we can make that part of the, I'm happy to support that as part of a motion now, to ask staff to go ahead and start the rebid process 6 months from today.
The penumbra is, and agreed there, we want this to happen as quickly as possible. It has been a long 10 years, and yes, we do have all the same comments coming back to us. But I have to take what he said in consideration. The options were very limited, and we couldn't be able to do some of the work or offer any other options. So with that in mind, I do believe that if we had companies bidding on, firms bidding on separate components, or where they have the capacity to be able to, you know, not all dock builders are home builders, and I think that's where the dilemma is. This is a total restoration, and I believe that's why it was an outclassed bid. So I believe if it was recalculated, re-engineered, reposted, I think that we'll get an abundance of bids, and it's not more of a timing mechanism, it's more of the scope of the business that has to be done. So if we split it up, or if we look at, and we'll leave that to, of course, purchasing and the rest of staff, but I believe if we re-engineer this, we will get far greater results.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, we've already heard from one of the pre-bidder attenders who's seemed to indicate he would have submitted his bid if there was clarification. Also, I just want to point out we have an active fine grant that will end in approximately 1 year. So we would be looking to hopefully, if possible, rebid, get a contractor to complete the project within that year's time frame. Otherwise, we lose that fine grant that's already been awarded. So those are two factors. From staff perspective, my perspective, from what's been explained and discussed today, a clarified rebid of a smaller scope might lead to more final bid submitters, and under that hope, you know, I would support just a clarified, refined scope bid.
Well, I don't want to compromise on the integrity of the project. This is going to be something that we expect visitors. We're going to see tourists. We're going to see local folks come, schools, to come to this site. We hope that that's the case, that it's that attractive. So I don't want to compromise on the element of the project, but I think that we can be maybe perhaps just a little more creative and enter into some sort of separation where there are some options that staff could work through this.
Roland, could you put the aerial of the site back up on the screen, please? So the removal of the deteriorated submerged pilings, is that cluster at the very waterward end? Those exposed pilings I see sticking up?
Yeah, essentially, there's this section here that have to be removed, and that would eventually be the location of some boat slips. This is the location of a deck that would be rebuilt. This is the ice house itself.
Right.
But yeah, that's part of the removal. There's also issues with, again, the support structures of the ice house itself. Part of the challenge is to secure and replace those without destroying the ice house.
Okay, but just in your opinion then, can we just break out the removal of those deteriorated submerged pilings at the end of the dock there as a separate bid? And isn't that, Dr. Cox, isn't that what you said someone else just did for Sebastian, was removal of dock and submerged pilings?
They removed 225 feet of pier. So
Yeah,
all
this
the
would be a lot
pilings, so
less
it would have
than
been the
that.
entire, and I don't, Roland, I thought that the entire dock, the pier part with the railings on it was also going to be removed and replaced. Is that correct?
The whole project would be reviewed for structural support. If there were deficient piles as well as what's at the end, they would be replaced as part of the restoration. And then that's part of the dock part of it, yes. As far as complete removal, I can't speak to that.
Yeah.
So then, Roland, do you know when they have $100,000 here under their item 3 in their bid, the removal of deteriorated submerged pilings, is that referring to just the eastern end there or the entire length of the pier?
I'm not absolutely sure as I'm speaking with you, whether it's just the end pieces or the overall. I think it was part of the overall dock restoration that included
Must
that.
be the end pieces that looks like there are 20 piles there. $5,000 a pile is pretty expensive removal.
Mr. Chairman, just a thought here. I don't think we should make multiple projects out of this, which is,
Okay.
I think, the route we may be going right now. I think it might make sense to have different components spelled out in the bid so we can compare component to component of the bids. But I think to try to make multiple projects out of this and to have multiple contractors potentially in there following each other is not the way to go. But perhaps clarity could be added, I think, as Roland was mentioning, if we just have people bid on the different components, so we can compare component to component on there and see where we are. And hopefully, again, staff's perspective is no, we don't ever like just to have one bid, but we do need to move a project forward. Based on what we heard from one of the pre-bid guys, maybe some clarity and doing some components, but I wouldn't want to try to make a removal project and then have somebody else come in and do other. I mean, this is historical. It needs to be looked at as a whole, and we need to be careful who we select. And I think that's the way that we've been going, and I think maybe we can get a better bid if we break out the components. But I would assume we would try to make this into one project, have one person responsible, and not have multiple people in there.
I'm just looking for a better price tag. Right, over $600,000 is quite a chunk.
Yep.
But we want it to happen quickly, and we will lose the fine grant if we don't act quickly. So that's more of an incentive. We're going to get the ball rolling right away.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll modify my motion then just to not award the bid as presented, instruct staff to rebid it in 6 months, and try to design the bid so it's more flexible and clarity in trying to get a better bid price. Is that,
well,
can we do that?
If you don't mind, Commissioner O'Brien, I might recommend we just go ahead and rebid as soon as we're able. If we have everything together, if we can have a contract in place by the first of the year, that would probably at least get more folks involved and give an extended amount of timeline before the grant funds go away. I think if we put it on the street and say we expect notice to proceed in January of 2018, I think that might give the contractors a little better idea of what their workload is now, where it is going forward. I think that might be a little bit safer in my suggestion than waiting a set 6 months.
So proceed. You're recommending proceed without delay.
Yes, sir. Or just with the presumption that the project would be estimated to start in January of 2018 with award before the end of this year.
In the spirit of maintaining the fine grant and any other opportunities that may exist.
If kind of where I've always been on this is I just think the price is too high. So if you think moving it forward now with a January start date will get us better pricing, then I'll go with what staff is recommending. So, Mr. Chairman, my motion is to reject the bid as currently presented, instruct staff to go ahead and rebid it with a projected start date of January 2018.
Second so amended.
And that'll allay, hopefully, Commissioner Adams' concerns about moving forward quickly.
Not really, but I get it.
Okay. Any other further comments from the board? Any further comments from the attending audience? Staff, any questions? We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by myself. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 3-1, with Commissioner Adams dissenting and Commissioner Zorc absent. Thank you. They're already getting back to the office. Start it up. Next item is from the Office of Utility Services, an authorization for the Southern Management to provide emergency restoration work at Spoonbill Marsh due to Hurricane Irma. Good afternoon, Mr. Burke.
Afternoon. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. We have in front of you a request for the board to authorize a contractor, Southern Management, who's been doing some work out at Spoonbill to provide emergency restoration work. Attached to the agenda backup was the damage assessment post-hurricane, which our contractor was able to get on site. We had an emergency PO that was authorized prior to the storm event, anticipating that we would have some damages. We worked with the purchasing department to issue that purchase order. That was issued on the 6th of September, before Mr. Brown had declared a state of emergency for the county. But after the storm, the contractor went on site to do the first push to move some vegetation to the side and document some of the storm damage. So there is extensive damage due to the fact that this proximity of this facility is directly on the Indian River Lagoon, and that was in the 67 or 68 pages that were supplied as part of the backup for the board to consider. Between the declaration and when we're meeting today, the county administrator, through his authorization, did a change order to secure some additional funding for the contractor to be able to do some pump cleanout. Although due to the uncertainty of Maria, we're kind of on hold right now to find out what's going on. The latest models, according to the National Weather Service Hurricane Center at the 11 o'clock, have that peeling to the north, but certainly our thoughts are with those folks in Puerto Rico that may be susceptible to a Cat 5 storm. Nonetheless, we have vegetative debris in and around the site, and we have extensive damage to the roadway and to the sump at the pump. So there's two things that I think the board just needs to be considered is one, the on-site flow to the site and two, the off-site flow of that water. So the on-site flow really is conveyed through a series of pumps that we have directly on the lagoon. We are unable at this time to start those pumps due to the heavy siltation and vegetation issues that we're talking about in the agenda item. So if the board authorizes us to move forward today, we'd engage with our contractor to begin that clean out. There was a picture on, I think, page 50 or 60 of the agenda item where there's some heavy siltation that's been washed up into that sump area. We want to make sure that's cleaned out prior to starting those pumps. Otherwise, we'll be replacing not only pumps, but certain impellers associated with the conveyance system. So that's getting water onto the site. That's critical as part of our FDEP permit, is to be able to mix the DC coming from our water plant with the on-site lagoon water, which we've been doing for many years. But also then it's the flow off-site. So there's been an initial assessment of those WIMS that allow the water to flow. Those are the channels that connect to the inner lagoon for that clean water. But interconnected, gradually looking at the WIMS are the mosquito ditches that are impacted through the heavy vegetation, the mangroves that are top heavy that have been snapped or broken off due to heavy winds, but also some of the runnels that have impacts as well. So it's really flow control. If you want to look at it, there's some almost like beaver dam that's happening right now. We also have some issues on the north side where the FDTOT canal is. Through Public Works, we had some road work done after Hurricane Matthew last year, and that has been washed out due to the heavy water from US 1, and also the fact that there probably is some blockage on the east side of that FDOT canal. So that's something that's not considered emergency at this point. What we're asking for today, staff is asking for, is emergency authorization of this work at Spoonbill so that we can get those pumps started, but also relieve some of the water that needs to get back to the inner lagoon. So that's my short presentation. I have some before and after pictures if the board is interested, but I certainly am available for any questions that y'all may have.
Mr. Chair, I'm ready to move staff recommendation.
Second.
That's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Solari. Any discussion from the board? Is there any?
I just want to note that, I mean, from the type of damage we've had here, not only can the system not operate as it's meant to operate, but the damage is going to get worse over time. I mean, doing nothing is not like some things where it's not going to increase the cost. Doing nothing for a period of time is going to significantly increase the cost of remediating the problem later. So that's part of my second of the motion to get it done right, and to get it done as fast as possible.
Well, Vinny's doing it, so it's going to be done right.
You still got to watch him. You know, he's from Boston.
You'll be careful. Okay. Well, motion's on the floor. No discussion from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 4-0, with Commissioner Zorc absent. With that, that concludes the regular agenda. Tomorrow at 5:01, we will have the final budget hearing. We hope that you all can attend. We do, right? Yes. And on another note, in the beginning of the commission meeting, we made an announcement regarding John Kim. If you'll notice, Commissioner Zorc has left early on. The incident did not have a favorable outcome. It appears that it did not have the outcome that was hoped for. So our hearts and prayers are going out to the Kim family and all those in the Young's Market. I know that young man over 18 years, and folks, he was a good man. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.